Chapter 878. How dare he threaten the Yu family in front of Yu Shuangyan? Everyone's eyes fell on Yi Guqin as if they were looking at a fool. Although Yu Shuangyan's personality was as cold as an iceberg, she had a strong sense of belonging to the Yu family. She was also very protective of the Yu family. Otherwise, she would not have targeted Yen worried guest. But now, Yi Guqin actually dared to threaten Yu Yuankue in front of Yu Shuangyan. In everyone's eyes, this was no different from courting death. Duguwubai, shut up. Don't provoke her. Qin Paisai's expression changed. Yu Shuangyan was only targeting Yen worried guest. Yi Guqin's words undoubtedly pulled the fire of war onto the people of Tianfeng Ridge. Are you threatening me? Yu Shuangyan's tone was extremely cold and indifferent. Her eyes fell on Yi Guqin casually. A level 3 spiritual bridge of heaven and earth cultivation was nothing in her eyes. Correct. Yi Guqin stood with his hands behind his back and a faint smile on his face. And it was a threat. Boom. A level 9 spiritual bridge of heaven and earth aura spread out from Yu Shuangyan's body. The aura was so oppressive that the people of Tianfeng Ridge could hardly breathe. Only Yi Guqin stood there calmly. His black hair fluttered in the wind, and his expression did not change. Very good. Remember your words. Yu Shuangyan did not say anything more and left directly. Yu Yuankue also sneered and glanced at Yi Guqin and the others. Then he followed Yu Shuangyan and left. Ha, Brother Qin, you're on your own this time. Purple Smoke Lord and Yellow Dragon Lord smiled and shook their heads. It seemed that they did not need to do anything. Tianfeng Ridge would be finished this time. Princess Qin will wait for a good show. Zi Yusin, Huang Feiyun, and the others gloated. Then they left as well. The people of Tianfeng Ridge were depressed. Some resentful gazes fell on Yi Guqin. If not for Yi Guqin's provocation, why would Yu Shuangyan care about small fries like them? Qin Paisai's entire body was drained of energy, and her beautiful face was ashen. She didn't even have the strength to scold Yi Guqin. Qin Jin didn't say a word, but he looked at Yi Guqin with a hidden sharpness. It could be imagined that if the entire Tianfeng Ridge was annihilated this time, then Yi Guqin, who had refined the spirit Bodhi, would not have a good ending. But in the face of Qin Jin's threatening gaze, Yi Guqin remained calm. Yi Guqin did not have the strength. His provocation was indeed a suicidal one. Unfortunately, Yi Guqin was only speaking the truth. Yu Shuangyan really didn't care about her. At this moment, the crowd's exclamations could be heard from afar. A group of people walked over, led by a well-dressed young man. He was handsome and tall, and had an extraordinary aura. It's Hua Xingjie from the Hua family, ranked 19th on the sword leaderboard. Rumor has it that he's the strongest person in the younger generation of the Hua family, after Hua Wuxiu, Han Lingxian said with respect. That was a form of respect for the strong. In Han Lingshuan's opinion, the top 20 geniuses on the sword leaderboard were almost at the top of the small group of people. The peak of the 9th level of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. Yi Guqin's eyes were deep. He had a grudge with Hua Xingjie from the Hua family, so it was hard to say whether he would have a conflict with Hua Xingjie. However, at this moment, there were suddenly exclamations of surprise. Hua Xingjie was actually walking towards the people of Tianfeng Ridge. What's going on? Everyone in Tianfeng Ridge was stunned. Was Hua Xingjie targeting Tianfeng Ridge because Tianfeng Ridge had rejected the Hua family's invitation? Thinking of this, Qin Paisai and the others turned pale and their legs almost gave out. Many people gathered around and looked at them. The closer they got, the more Yi Guqin could feel Hua Xingjie's extremely powerful genuine qi. No wonder he was a genius from a fake saint family. Tianfeng Ridge Lord, I won't interfere in your family's affairs. I just want to ask you something. I heard that there's a sword demon in Tianfeng Ridge who broke my brother's sword move. Where is he? Hua Xingjie's tone was indifferent. Even in front of Qin Jin, who was a venerable, he was still very cold. The sword demon should be just passing by. He's not with us, Qin Jin said indifferently. Really? What a pity that I can't subdue him personally. Hua Xingjie shook his head with pity. The moment these words were spoken, everyone was shocked. The name of the mysterious sword demon in Tianfeng Ridge had already spread across half of the Sword Dynasty. Many people thought that the mysterious sword demon's strength was enough to enter the top 10 of the sword ranking. He might even be a genius from some overlord forces who had come to the Sword Dynasty to gain experience. However, at this moment, Hua Xingjie actually said that he could subdue him personally. It was as if he could easily subdue the sword demon. Everyone in Tianfeng Ridge felt uncomfortable when they heard this. After all, the sword demon had become famous in Tianfeng Ridge and was considered half a genius of Tianfeng Ridge. If the sword demon was here, he wouldn't have the right to speak. Zhuo Qiuqing muttered to herself. Hua Xingjie shook his head and left. Ye Guqin narrowed his eyes slightly and didn't act rashly. Then, some famous geniuses appeared again. For example, Yin Wufeng from the Yin family. He was dressed in a black robe and had a devilish face. He was ranked 23rd on the sword ranking, but he wasn't any weaker than Hua Xingjie. There was also a strange and cunning girl dressed in yellow with a scorpion tail braid. Some people recognized her. She was Shangguan Yan from the Shangguan family. She was ranked 25th on the sword ranking. In addition to these geniuses from sword clans, there were also some rogue geniuses on the sword ranking who were quite eye-catching. For example, Gui Jianchou and Yanchou were very famous. The 5 academies selection this time is really like a group of dragons crossing the river. Some lords sighed. At this moment, a supremacy suddenly descended from the sky and announced loudly, "Everyone, the 5 academies selection has officially begun." This selection is divided into 3 stages. The 5 academies will be waiting for you in the last stage. It's finally begun. Hearing the elder's words, all the geniuses outside the Sword Venerable Ruins were extremely excited. If they performed well in these 3 stages, they would definitely be noticed by the big shots of the 5 academies. In the future, if resources were gathered and trained, it was not impossible for them to become the Sword Sun. Because of this, all the geniuses' eyes were surging with the flames of battle. Only the geniuses from Skywind Ridge were dejected and had no confidence at all. The first stage is the 3 Gates of Heaven. It can be used to test your combat strength, sword Dao talent, and growth potential. This stage is the most basic test of your overall quality. If you can't stand out in this stage, then the next 2 stages will be difficult, the supremacy said. The 3 Gates of Heaven? Ye Guqin was still puzzled. Han Lingxian explained, the 3 Gates of Heaven are the gates of the Sword Venerable Ruins. There are 3 sky-piercing stone pillars inside that test your combat strength, talent, and potential. Many geniuses from the Sword Dynasty have been tested and left their names on the Gates of Heaven. I see. Ye Guqin nodded slightly. The thing he was least afraid of was this kind of test. Because even Ye Guqin himself did not know how monstrous his sword Dao cultivation and talent were. In short, it should not be too bad. Chapter 879. Not long after, all the geniuses outside the Sword Venerable Relic rushed into the basin. At the entrance of the ancient ruins stood 3 giant stone doors, which were over a few hundred zhang tall, giving off an imperious aura. The strangest thing was that there were countless glowing words on the stone doors. Every single word was a name. Some were dull and lifeless, while others were shining brightly. However, there were even some words that directly left the stone gate and floated above the stone gate like stars. The words that were shining with even more intense light were like the bright moon surrounded by stars. That's the 3 heavens gates. Only the real geniuses can leave their names on it. Han Lingxian raised her snow-white neck, and her beautiful eyes were filled with undisguised admiration. Are the 3 heavens gates so magical? Ye Guqin was surprised. Of course, but this test is only effective for those below the martial supremacy realm. After all, the owner of this relic, the Thunder Sword Venerable, is only a 9th heaven martial supremacy. Besides, it seems that only those who are ranked above the 1000th place will have their names appear on the stone doors. Ye Guqin nodded slightly. In simple terms, each of the 3 heavens gates could only leave 1,000 words. If there was a newcomer, the name of the previous person would be erased. In addition, the higher the ranking of the person, the brighter the light. The more powerful one's name could leave the stone doors and float above the stone doors like stars surrounding the moon. Yiguchen glanced at the 3 stone doors and saw that there was a name on each of them. It floated at the top like a bright moon, and the surrounding names were like stars surrounding it. There was a dazzling name floating above the Heaven's Gate that tested one's combat strength. Hua Wuxiu. Yiguchen was familiar with this name. After all, he had cracked Hua Wuxiu's shadow sword move. However, it was obviously not enough to represent Hua Wuxiu's true strength. Yiguchen looked sideways. There was also a name on the stone tablet that tested one's sword talent. Jian Jinghong. Second on the sword ranking, Jian Jinghong. Yiguchen muttered to himself. Finally, Yiguchen's gaze fell on the growth potential stone tablet. There was only one simple word: purple. The most mysterious number 1 on the sword ranking, purple. Yiguchen's gaze was deep. He had also heard of the rumors of the first place on the sword ranking. This number 1 on the sword ranking never showed his true appearance to others. He wore a purple mask on his face and had long purple hair, so he was called Purple. While Yiguchen was pondering, the other Sky Prides were also observing the 3 Heaven's Gates. TSK, these 3 stone doors have been taken by the top 3 of the sword ranking. Do you think that someone will pull down the top 3 in this test and put them on top of their heads? How is this possible? Do you think the top 3 of the sword rankings can be casually shaken? Many geniuses were discussing. On the other side, Yuxuangyan, who had always been indifferent like an iceberg, could not help but stir up a faint wave when she looked at Hua Wuxiu's name. Hua Wuxiu was her dream and goal. Young Master Hua, Shuangyan doesn't ask to be by your side, as long as I can follow behind you. Yuxuangyan muttered to herself. Big brother, this time, my goal is also to strive for first place. Hua Xingjie was also burning with fighting spirit. Many Sky Prides had Hua Wuxiu, Jian Jinghong, and Purple as their goals. On the other hand, Yiguchen did not have the top 3 on the sword ranking as his goal. Because in this world, the only person he needed to chase was himself. Duguwubai, you boasted before. If you can't leave your name on the Heaven's Gate, it will be too laughable. Su Wenbin seized the opportunity to attack. Han Lingxuan's gaze was also a little worried. Perhaps in terms of talent and comprehension, Yiguchen would perform well, but in terms of combat strength and potential, Han Lingxian was really not confident. Yiguchen did not say much, and could not be bothered to respond to Su Wenbin. Pretentious. Su Jingjing pursed her lips. The supremacy who presided over the selection shouted loudly, geniuses who want to participate in the selection may enter the Heaven's Gate. All 3 Heaven's Gates will be tested. Whoosh! As soon as the supremacy finished speaking, all the Sky Prides moved at the same time, turning into 3 torrents and entering the 3 Heaven's Gates. Yiguchen also entered. As soon as Yiguchen stepped into the Heaven's Gate, he felt as if he had passed through a layer of water curtain. The scene in front of him changed. A towering stone pillar seemed to be supporting the sky, and a heavy feeling pervaded the air. Yiguchen looked around and realized that he was the only one around. Everyone will be separated? Yiguchen muttered. However, on second thought, being separated would allow him to concentrate and unleash his full strength. Yiguchen was the first to enter the Heaven's Gate to test his combat strength. Yiguchen walked in front of the stone pillar and let out a deep breath. Since there was no one around, he could use his skills without any scruples. Let's try the God Devourer sword. Yiguchen muttered to himself. The primordial demon sword was the ultimate weapon that even the overlord-level forces coveted. Yiguchen's energy reserve was still previously, so he could not use the God Devourer sword. Now, not only had he completely recovered, but he had also broken through to the heaven and earth spiritual bridge, so he chose to give it a try. Boom! Yiguchen activated the limit of his energy reserve. After breaking through to the heaven and earth spiritual bridge, his energy reserve had really turned into a huge ocean, and liquid true energy was swirling like waves. Terrifying true energy was injected into the God Devourer sword. However, the God Devourer sword quivered slightly, then fell silent again. Yiguchen was speechless for a moment. Yiguchen, even if you break through to the heaven and earth spiritual bridge, You can't use the God Devourer sword for the time being. The primordial demon sword is not something that anyone can control. Su Qingyu's primordial spirit appeared. Then what should I do? Yi Guqin did not know much about the famed primordial demon sword. You're lucky that the God Devourer sword's spirit has acknowledged you. However, your cultivation is still too weak. You'll have to wait until you reach the divine dwelling stage before you can try to control the primordial demon sword. Also, after you recover your consciousness, you'll have to use your soul power to nourish the demon sword day and night. Also, you'll have to start looking for materials to refine your doppelganger. The God Devourer sword is a demon sword after all, and I'm afraid that it will affect you in the future, Su Qingyu said. Alright, then let's try the Khanate sword embryo. Yi Guqin was not discouraged. If the primordial demon sword was so easy to control, it would not be worthy of its name as an ultimate weapon. Yi Guqin's mind moved, and a palm-sized, sparkling and translucent sword embryo, like a beautiful jade, emerged from his dantian. The sword blade was filled with chaotic qi, as if it could cut through everything. Yi Guqin did not need to deliberately cultivate the sword embryo at all. The two were originally one. He controlled it like a fish in water. Then let's test my true strength. Yi Guqin formed a seal with his hands, and the ancient god form was activated. The cultivation of the level 3 heaven and earth spiritual bridge was fully activated. The concept of man and sword as one erupted. Terrifying qi was injected into the Khanate sword embryo. The entire Khanate sword embryo seemed to have turned into a beautiful 7-colored jade, rippling with light and chaotic qi tumbling. Dugu's 9 swords, breaking sword style. Yi Guqin raised his hand, and the Khanate sword embryo burst out, tearing through the air and setting off violent waves. Chapter 880. This was the first time Yi Guqin had used his full strength after recovering his cultivation. Yi Guqin was able to fight against the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth when he was at the great mysterious gate stage. If he went all out, he could even withstand the attack of a divine dwelling stage cultivator. But now, Yi Guqin had broken through to the 3rd level of the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth. How strong would his strength be? There were probably not many people in the spiritual bridge stage who could be his match. Therefore, Yi Guqin wanted to measure his current strength. After the Khanate sword embryo returned to Yi Guqin, it was like a fish back in water. Its power was even stronger than when it was controlled by Gu Xiaoyang. A terrifying chaotic sword aura emerged from the sword embryo. Along with the breaking sword style, it slashed at the stone pillar. Boom! An indescribable shock wave swept through the entire space. It was as if an ancient giant had stomped on the ground. At this moment, outside the heavenly gate, the lords and some people from the aristocratic families were paying attention. TSK, as expected of the pride of the Hua family. Hua Xingjia's name is in the top 50. Some people looked at the combat strength heavenly gate. A shining name was suspended above the heavenly gate like a star. Although it was far from Hua Wuxiu, who was ranked first, it was not bad. After all, the 3 heavenly gates had been tested for countless years. To be able to rank in the top 50 was already amazing. Sigh, I'm still a distance away from Big Brother. Hua Xingjie walked out of the heavenly gate and sighed when he saw his result. Then, Yushuang Yan's name also appeared, but she was ranked in the 80s. Young Master Hua, no one can surpass you. Yushuang Yan was not discouraged. Instead, she admired Hua Wuxiu even more. Then Yin Wufeng, Shangguan Yan, and the other prodigies from the aristocratic families, as well as Gui Jianchou, Yan Chou, and the other unaffiliated prodigies, walked out of the heavenly gate one by one. There was no lack of outstanding performances, and their names shone like stars. Rumble. At that instant, the gate of heaven, which was used to test one's strength, began to vibrate violently as rays of light were emitted from it. This is... Even the supremacy who was in charge of the selection was shocked. This was the first time the heavenly gates had such a strange reaction. What's going on? Hua Xingjie, Yushuang Yan, and the other geniuses were all surprised. The hearts of the other lords trembled slightly when they saw this. Could such a change be the birth of a peerless genius? Just as everyone was shocked beyond words. The heavenly gate suddenly fell silent again. What's going on? Everyone was puzzled. Within the heavenly gates, Yiguchen looked at the stone pillar that was covered with cracks and was slightly surprised. His strength was beyond his estimation. The towering stone pillar surged with brilliance and began to heal. That's it. Yiguchen was puzzled. This was because he heard from Han Lingxian that once the test was over, a light screen would automatically appear in front of the stone pillar, and he could write his name. Then, he would leave and be able to see his results in the heavenly gates outside. However, the stone pillar did not react at all. Is my strength not enough to enter the top 1,000? Yiguchen was slightly puzzled. Then he directly exited the heavenly gates. He saw Han Lingxian and the people of Tianfeng Ridge in front of him. Young Master Dugu, you're out? Han Lingshuan's face was filled with joy. Yiguchen looked up and saw that Han Lingshuan's name was ranked about 600. To Han Lingxian, it was a pleasant surprise. The others, such as Qin Paisai, Su Wenbin, Su Jingjing, Zhuo Qiuqing, Zhen Lang, and the others, were about 700 to 800. Dugu Bai, I don't seem to see your name, Su Jingjing said with a half-smile. Forget it. Don't count on others. Zhuo Qiuqing waved her hand. Qin Paisai did not even bother to look at Yiguchen. Yiguchen's combat strength was not even in the top 1,000, so what else could she count on? In her heart, she had long regarded Yiguchen as a swindler who was trying to cheat the sacred medicine. Young Master Dugu, don't mind it. In the following Sword Dao talent test, you definitely won't be weaker than others, Han Lingxian encouraged. She knew that Yiguchen's cultivation was only at stage 3, so he probably could not display much combat strength. However, in terms of Sword Dao talent, Han Lingxian had witnessed it with her own eyes. If he could easily comprehend the Imperial Sword Steel, Yiguchen's Sword Dao talent was definitely not weak. Yiguchen did not care about the cold looks of the Tianfeng Ridge prodigies and entered the second heavenly gate again. In the heavenly gate space, Yiguchen once again saw a stone pillar that reached the sky. And on this sky-piercing stone pillar, there were countless profound sword moves and martial arts. This was the test of Sword Dao talent. Yiguchen sat cross-legged in front of the stone pillar and began to comprehend. In less than an hour, Yiguchen stood up and began to practice the moves. Like flowing clouds and flowing water, there was no delay at all, and there was even a faint concept emerging. This proved that not only had Yiguchen thoroughly comprehended the sword moves on the stone pillar, but he had also mastered them and reached the peak of perfection. The heavenly gate outside trembled once again, causing everyone to be extremely shocked. Could it be that the heavenly gate is broken? The supremacy presiding over the selection was also confused. In the past, such a special situation had never happened in the 3 heavenly gates. Yiguchen walked out of the heavenly gate again, but his name still did not appear on the heavenly gate. That young man came out quite quickly. Many people noticed Yiguchen. This was because the heavenly gate needed a certain amount of time to test one's talent. Most people were still comprehending in the heavenly gate space, and Yiguchen was the fastest to come out. No name appeared. It seems that this child has given up on comprehending. Seeing this, some lords shook their heads secretly. Yiguchen felt a sharp gaze looking at him. It was Qin Zhen. Yiguchen did not perform well twice, causing Qin Zhen to feel like he was being fooled by Yiguchen. Yiguchen was calm. He believed that there must be some kind of mystery in the heavenly gate. After that, the prodigies who underwent the talent test came out one after another. Hua Xingjie, Yin Wufeng, Shengguan Yan, Yushuang Yan, and the others' performances were still eye-catching. Gui Jianchou, Yan Chou, and the others did well too. On Tianfeng Ridge's side, Han Lingxian once again entered the top 1,000. Yiguchen, what about you? You didn't gain anything again? Su Jingjing covered her mouth and sneered. This is impossible. Han Lingxian was extremely surprised. Even she was amazed by Yiguchen's talent in the Sword Dao. How could he still not enter the top 1,000? Yiguchen did not explain. Even if he told the truth, the people of Tianfeng Ridge would probably take it as an excuse. Next was the final potential test. It could test a person's potential and how far they would grow in the future. Yi Guchen entered the third heavenly gate. As far as the eye could see, there was still a towering stone pillar. In front of the stone pillar, there was a gray futon. There was nothing to do in this round. All one had to do was sit on the futon and accept the potential test. Yi Guchen sat cross-legged on the futon. Rays of light rose from the futon and turned into a ball of light, enveloping Yi Guchen. The light seeped into Yi Guchen's body. The ultimate sea of qi, the chaotic sea of consciousness, the connate sword embryo, the perfect physical body, and so on were all detected. The demonic heart flame and the purple void mystic bomb were also included. Even the enlightening ancient tree was detected. Of course, the core thunder tribulation sword and the god devourer sword were silent in the depths of his dantian and were not detected. Even so, part of the potential that Yi Guchen had shown was enough to shock everyone. The heavenly gate outside trembled again. This time, just as Yi Guchen got up to leave again, a light screen appeared in front of the stone pillar. Chapter 881. Is that so? Yi Guchen came to a realization as he looked at the light screen that appeared in front of the sky-piercing stone pillar. So he can only leave his name after all 3 heavenly gates have been tested? But why aren't the others doing the same? Yi Guchen shook his head and stopped thinking about these unnecessary questions. His eyes flickered slightly, then he raised his hand and used his fingers as a sword. True Qi gushed out. 2 words that contained peerless sharpness landed on the light screen. Yi Guchen smiled faintly and walked out of the heavenly gate space. Outside the heavenly gate space, all the lords were paying attention to the heavenly gate. The prodigies who walked out of the heavenly gate space were also looking at their rankings nervously. Hua Xingjie, Yushuang Yan in Wufeng, Shengguan Yan, and other prodigies were watching. Ghost Jianchou, Yan Chok, and other prodigies were also watching. The lords were also looking for the results of their prodigies. Yi Guchen walked out of the heavenly gate and saw Su Wenbin, Su Jingjing, and the others looking at him with cold smiles. Qin Paisai was expressionless and did not look at Yi Guchen. Han Lingxian sighed and did not say anything. No rankings yet? Yi Guchen raised his eyebrows slightly. At this moment, the heavenly gate shook violently again. This time, it was not just one heavenly gate, but all 3 heavenly gates shook violently at the same time. At first, the shaking was limited to the 3 heavenly gates, then it began to spread everywhere. The entire sword supremacy ruins shook violently like the beating of a drum. The shaking was unprecedented. What the hell is going on? Even the venerable one who was in charge of the selection turned pale with fright and was at a loss. What's wrong? What happened? The lords and the geniuses were astounded. The 3 heavenly gates had never experienced such a change. Just then, one of the geniuses cast his gaze onto the heaven's gate that was used to test one's combat strength. An unprecedented radiance shone out from the heaven's gate before condensing into 2 gigantic words. Sword demon? That heaven's favorite stuttered out in shock. Boom! An incomparably dazzling brilliance burst forth from the combat strength heavenly gate. The 2 words, sword demon, rose into the air like a radiant sun, suspended above the heavenly gate, releasing endless light. Hua Wuxiu, who was ranked first in the heavenly gates in terms of combat strength, has been replaced, someone exclaimed. Everyone was shocked. How long had it been since the first place of the 3 great heavenly gates had changed? Hua Wuxiu had always been the strongest in the heavenly gate, but now he had been replaced by the sword demon. That's impossible. Yushuang Yan's emotions were thrown into disbelief. The only person she admired in her heart, the high and mighty Hua Wuxiu, was actually suppressed by someone else. If Hua Wuxiu's reputation was like the bright moon, then the sword demon's reputation was like the blazing sun, hanging high above the bright moon. How is that possible? Big Brother's record has been broken. The sword demon is actually here? Hua Xingjie was also in disbelief. His gaze suddenly turned to the Tianfeng Ridge's side. Everyone at Tianfeng Ridge could not hide the shock in their hearts. The sword demon is actually here? It should be the sword demon. Who exactly is he? The Su siblings, Zuoqiuqing, Zhenlang, and the rest were all in disbelief. Han Lingshuan's heart skipped a beat. She glanced at Yiguchen from the corner of her eye. Yiguchen's expression was calm, and there was no expression on his face. Han Lingxian thought for a moment and shook her head. No matter how highly she thought of Yiguchen, she could not associate him with the sword demon. After all, in the eyes of outsiders, the sword demon was someone who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Hua Wuxiu. Sword demon, you're really here. On the other side, Yen Suk took a deep breath. The person he wanted to meet the most was the sword demon. Everyone present was shocked by this scene. However, it was not over yet. Rumble. The gate of heaven, which was used to assess talent, was still shaking violently. Under the gaze of countless people present, a name that was as dazzling as the sun once again surpassed Jian Jinghong, who was ranked first in talent. The sword demon had once again replaced Jian Jinghong in the talent assessment. Oh my god, he's ranked first in both gates. What kind of monster is the sword demon? Countless gasps could be heard from all directions. Hua Shengjie, Yu Shuangyan, and the other prodigies from the aristocratic families widened their eyes. Just the fact that the sword demon was ranked first in terms of combat power was enough to shock them. Now, the sword demon's talent was ranked first as well. Countless people's hearts were shaken, and huge waves were set off. However, it was still not over yet. The gate of heaven, which was used to assess talent, rumbled and shook. It shouldn't be. Countless people present looked at this scene and secretly swallowed a mouthful of saliva. There was a premonition in their hearts. There might really be a peerless monster in this 5 Academy selection. Rumble. An unprecedentedly intense light emerged from the third gate of heaven. The 2 words, sword demon, once again rose like the sun, suppressing the first name, Z, who was ranked first. At this moment, the 3 gates of heaven, as if resonating with each other, shook together and released a dazzling light. Above the 3 gates of heaven, the 3 names of the sword demon were like the sun, rising into the sky. The light shone in all directions and shook the heavens and earth. The 3 lights illuminated the world, shaking the sword dynasty. The whole place was dead silent, and everyone was shocked. The 2 words, sword demon, which were like iron hooks and silver paintings, bloomed with a peerless sharpness, as if it was announcing that a peerless sword prodigy would rise in the sword dynasty. His combat power surpassed Hua Wuxiu's. His talent surpassed Jian Jinghong's. His potential surpassed the prodigy Z. The top 3 on the sword ranking was suppressed by the sword demon alone. There were thousands of people present, but no one made a sound. The 2 words, sword demon, silenced the world. The 3 gates of heaven shook, and the 3 lights illuminated the world, causing the whole sword dynasty to feel it. Somewhere in the sword dynasty, in a pavilion, an extremely handsome young man sat alone in front of a chessboard, playing Go. Surprisingly, he held a white chess piece in one hand and a black chess piece in the other. He was playing Go with himself. At a certain moment, the young man suddenly sensed something and looked at the distant horizon. The sword dynasty is about to change. Another great dragon has entered the game. The young man shook his head slightly. He held a chess piece in his hand and placed it down. The entire chessboard was filled with black and white sword chi, and it was about to become a dragon-slaying game. In a certain forbidden cultivation ground in the sword dynasty, countless sword chi surged out in all directions. A bare-chested young man sat cross-legged in the midst of countless sword chi, accepting the experience. His black hair fluttered in the wind, and his face was as sharp as a knife. There was a sword mark between his eyebrows, and his temperament was wild and arrogant. Another opponent has appeared, but this time, Jian Jinghong, will definitely get the Jiankui position. On top of a mountain, a figure looked at the distant horizon, looking at the 3 rising suns. That person wore a devilish purple mask on his face, and his striking purple hair fluttered in the wind. His hands were behind his back, and he had an awe-inspiring aura that made people feel intimidated. Interesting. The last person who triggered my battle intent was Di Haotian. I hope this person won't disappoint me. The person wearing the purple mask was the mysterious prodigy who ranked first on the sword ranking, Z. Chapter 882. In the sword's supreme ruins, the 3 heavenly gates shook, and 3 lights illuminated the world. It could be said that it caused quite a stir in the entire Sword Dynasty. After all, the light emitted by the 2 words, Sword Demon, was too dazzling and intense. It hung high in the sky, and it was difficult not to notice it. In a bustling capital of the Sword Dynasty, a slender figure walked among the crowd. It was a middle-aged man with a handsome face and a cinnabar mole between his eyebrows. His robe was snow-white and spotless. His long black hair was casually draped over his shoulders, mixed with a few strands of white hair. There was a wine gourd on his waist and a red umbrella in his hand. Whether it was rain or shine, he carried it with him. At this moment, the man seemed to have sensed something and looked into the distance. At the end of the sky, 3 balls of light rose into the sky, illuminating all directions. 3 lights illuminate the world, the Sword Supreme Array. Is he also one of the choices of the 7th Sword Supreme Array Master, John Doe? Then, does he have the ability to help the Alliance Master escape? The incomparably handsome man murmured softly. Countless eyes in the entire Sword Dynasty looked at the Wind Thunder Ridge. In the Sword Supreme ruins, the shock on everyone's faces did not fade for a long time. The 2 words, Sword Demon, were like the blade of a sword, blooming with peerless sharpness. Sword Demon, the one who broke Hua Wuxiu's sword move in the Wind Ridge. Many people were shocked. Previously, the name, Sword Demon, was only known in half of the Sword Dynasty. After all, he only broke one of Hua Wuxiu's sword moves. No matter how strong he was, no one thought that he could surpass Hua Wuxiu. But now, the name, Sword Demon, overshadowed the 3 geniuses on the Sword Supreme Array. How could they not be shocked? After today, the name, Sword Demon, would shake the entire Sword Dynasty. Who is the Sword Demon? Everyone's gaze swept back and forth between the 2 of them. Many people turned their attention to the Sky Wind Ridge and observed carefully. This was because the Sword Demon had first appeared in Tianfeng Ridge. However, they found that no one matched the image of the Sword Demon in their hearts. As for Yi Guchen, he was only at the 3rd stage of the Heaven and Earth Spiritual Bridge. Being stared at by so many people, the Sky Prides of the Skywind Ridge broke out in cold sweat. They felt extremely pressured. Qin Paisai waved her hand and hurriedly said, "The Sword Demon has not been recruited by my Skywind Ridge. He is not one of them." That's true. If the Sword Demon is really in Tianfeng Ridge, why didn't he appear at the Sword Ranking Shrine that day? Zi Yusin and Huang Feiyun murmured. They were relieved. They were the ones who were most worried about the appearance of the Sword Demon. Fortunately, the Sword Demon did not join the Skywind Ridge camp. Who is the Sword Demon? Yushuang Yan's face was as cold as ice. It was hard for her to accept that the Hua Wuxiu she admired in her heart had been overshadowed by another man. Yushuang Yan had never seen the Sword Demon with her own eyes, so she doubted his strength. Since the Sword Demon is participating in the selection, he will show up sooner or later. I want to see what qualifications he has to suppress the top 3 Sky Prides of the sword ranking. Hua Xingjia's eyes were also filled with fighting spirit. He would not be too afraid if he had not seen the real power of the Sword Demon. Alright, everyone, the first stage is just a preliminary test. This stage will not eliminate anyone. Rest here for a day, and the second stage will begin tomorrow. The supremacy who presided over the selection said loudly. Then he went directly to the depths of the ruins to report this matter to the people of the 5 academies. Yi Guchen sat cross-legged on the ground and adjusted his breath. Now was not the best time to reveal the Sword Demon's identity. If he was exposed now, Yi Guchen would become a target for everyone. However, Yi Guchen wouldn't have to hide anything in the 2nd or even the 3rd round. So, he would be able to enter the 5 great academies directly when the time came. Young Master Dugu, the next stage is the real test. Han Lingxian looked worried. Don't worry, I will make sure you pass. Yi Guchen smiled faintly. Tisk, aren't you afraid of biting your tongue when you talk big? Su Jingjing and the others glanced at Yi Guchen. What right did someone who could not even make it into the top 1,000 of the 3 sky gates have to talk big? Do you think you are the Sword Demon? How dare you talk big? Su Wenbin sneered. Enough, don't say anything. Chin Paisai shouted. She was not in a good mood. In the second stage, they would be targeted by the Purple Smoke Ridge, Yellow Dragon Ridge, and even Yuyuankue. It was almost impossible for them to pass. Just as the Sky Prides outside were resting. In the depths of the ruins, above the sky, 5 huge flying ships were floating in the void. They were the members of the 5 academies. They were at the end of the last stage, waiting for the Sky Prides to arrive. However, the 3 brilliant lights just now had already shocked the people of the 5 academies. Who is the Sword Demon? No matter who he is, since he came to participate in the selection, he will definitely appear in the end. My Sun Moon College must get him. Come on, this Sword Demon, my Eternal Wind Academy is determined to win. Such a Sky Pride must have high standards. I'm afraid that only Tensei College, which is ranked first, can catch his eye. The gazes of some people from the academy shifted to the ship in the middle. Tensei College was the top of the 5 academies. It had many talents and resources. Hua Wuxiu, who was ranked 3rd on the sword roll, was a disciple of the Holy Emblem of Tensei College. On the flying ship of Tensei College, an old man in a black robe stood calmly. Behind him stood a young man with a broken arm. Yi Guchen was no stranger to him. It was Hua Dingfei. He was also a disciple of Tensei College and had come to watch the competition. Elder Hua Mo, it seems that Tensei College will have another good seed this time. Some people from other academies laughed. The Sword Demon should know what the best choice is. Only my Tensei College can train him well. The elder of Tensei College named Hua Mo said calmly. He was not very happy about the appearance of the Sword Demon. Hua Mo was also a member of the Hua family. On the other hand, the Sword Demon had suppressed Hua Wuxiu on the Heavenly Gate. This made it difficult for Hua Mo to be happy. In his opinion, Hua Wuxiu should be the most dazzling Sky Pride. However, if the Sword Demon was sensible and joined Tensei College or the Hua family, Hua Mo would be willing to accept him. Do you want to recruit him to Tensei College or the Hua family? On another flying ship, an old man in a linen robe said indifferently. Haha, Bei Xian Elder, is Sacred Cliff College jealous? Hua Mo said with a fake smile. Sacred Cliff College was ranked last among the 5 major academies. Only a few of the top 20 Sky Prides on the sword ranking were from Sacred Cliff College. Moreover, Sacred Cliff College had the least number of Sky Prides in each of the 5 academies' selections. Sacred Cliff College also wants to fight for the Sword Demon. Bei Xian Elder snorted coldly. How could such a Sky Pride be ranked last? Ridiculous. Elder Hua Mo flicked his sleeves and was not worried at all. On the other side, Mu Xingzu and the others were on the flying ship of Tianxian College. Who is the Sword Demon? He suppressed the top 3 on the sword ranking by himself. Could it be that another genius from an overlord-level force is here? Yinglang exclaimed. The Sword Demon? Mu Xingzu murmured. Her eyes revealed a painful look of reminiscence. She remembered that in the Saint Origin dynasty, Yi Guchen had killed hundreds of people in the sword realm of the void in order to protect her. He was also called the Sword Demon. Now, Mu Xingzu was reminded of the past and clenched her jade-like hands. No matter who it is, the title of the Sword Demon can only belong to Senior Brother Yi. No one else deserves to be called the Sword Demon. Chapter 883. A day passed in the blink of an eye. After some simple preparations, the prodigies of the 360 Ridges welcomed the second round of selection. The Supremacy who presided over the selection appeared again and explained the rules of the second round. The second round was called the Token Battle. There was a large forest in the Sword Venerable Ruins, which was a natural battlefield. There were also many monsters, various elixirs, and even sage-to-be elixirs. Of course, the most important thing was that every prodigy who entered the forest would receive a token. And in this round, only the prodigies who obtained 10 tokens could pass and enter the deepest part of the Honorable Sword Ruins to participate in the third round of the selection. This meant that for every Heaven's favorite who passes the test, at least 9 Heaven's favorites will be eliminated. There were about 5,000 to 6,000 people from the 360 Ridges, including the prodigies from the aristocratic families and individual cultivators. In the end, only 500 to 600 people could pass the second stage. The passing rate was only about 1/10. It was indeed frighteningly low. No wonder the 5 academies of the Sword Dynasty are so famous. The selection is so strict, Yiguchen muttered to himself. However, it was also because of this that the 5 academies could become the cradle of Sword Dao elites. Alright, you can go to the forest now, but you have to enter separately, the Supremacy said loudly. The reason for entering separately was to prevent people from teaming up at the beginning and eliminating powerful prodigies. Once they entered deep into the misty forest, it would naturally depend on their own luck. Be careful in the forest. Ziyusen looked at them mockingly. See you in the forest. Huang Feiyun also had a playful smile on his face. The prodigies of the Skywind Ridge all had ugly expressions. They could pass the first round safely, but they were destined to be intercepted by the 2 ridges in the second round. In the previous 5 academy selections, the Skywind Ridge was completely wiped out in the second round and did not even make it to the third round. Dugubai, remember your promise, Shinjin said in a deep voice. Yiguchen smiled and did not say anything. You're still pretending at this time? The Su siblings shook their heads secretly. The forest was located in the basin, behind the 3 sky gates. In less than 15 minutes, everyone arrived at the outskirts of the misty forest. Yiguchen looked into the distance and saw a lush forest that stretched as far as the eye could see. Thick white fog, like smoke and clouds, filled the entire forest. Even deeper in, one could vaguely see the undulating mountain range, and the sound of thunder could be heard. That damaged heavenly tribulation weapon must be in the 3rd stage, Yiguchen thought to himself. He participated in the 5 academies selection to enter the 5 academies. But if he could get a quasi-tribulation weapon along the way, it wouldn't be bad either. Alright, you have 7 days to walk through the misty forest. If you haven't walked out in 7 days, or if you haven't obtained 10 tokens, it will be considered a failure. In addition, once you enter the misty forest, your life cannot be guaranteed. If you are timid, you can choose to withdraw. The Venerable One said indifferently. What the 5 great academies wanted were geniuses with strong wills who were not afraid of death. She was not a flower in a greenhouse. Therefore, in this selection, they would not guarantee their safety. If they were surrounded and killed by other geniuses, their deaths would be in vain. As soon as this was said, most of the geniuses' expressions did not change. A small number of geniuses' eyes flickered slightly, but in the end, they chose to stay. Yiguchen looked around and nodded secretly. The Sword Dynasty was indeed the first dynasty. Not many of these geniuses of the younger generation flinched. Then Yiguchen and the others split up and entered the misty forest. Even if they were from the same mountain range, it was impossible to gather in a group at the beginning. As soon as Yiguchen entered the forest, he felt the temperature around him become cold. There was heavy fog around him. What was more surprising was that this fog had the effect of isolating the perception of the divine soul. In other words, if someone attacked from behind at this time, it would be difficult to detect. Yiguchen's sea of consciousness had not recovered, so it was difficult for him to mobilize too much divine soul power. Under the restriction of the fog, it was even more limited. However, with Yiguchen's current strength, there were probably not many people who could hurt him, even if it was a sneak attack. Yiguchen went straight into the forest. Swoosh! A black shadow shot towards Yiguchen like an arrow. Yiguchen did not use his sword. Instead, he used his fingers as a sword, and sword chi gushed out from his fingertips. The 6-pulse divine sword was displayed. As the light from his finger dispersed, the black shadow was immediately split into 2. It was a dark poisonous snake. 5th rank monster beast. Yiguchen did not even look at it and continued to move forward. Ordinary 5th rank monsters were only equivalent to the life and death chamber. Peak 5th rank monsters were comparable to the heaven and earth bridge. 6th rank monsters were equivalent to the divine dwelling stage. But until now, Yiguchen had not encountered a 6th rank monster beast. Just as Yiguchen was about to continue moving forward, his footsteps suddenly stopped. Swoosh! A dazzling sword light suddenly stabbed towards Yiguchen's back. Yiguchen turned sideways and reached out to grab the sword. "You're courting death." A cold snort sounded. Clang. However, the result was that Yiguchen tightly grasped the sword with one hand. How is this possible? The young man who attacked with the sword was in disbelief. His sword was a divine weapon with mystical runes and could cut through iron like mud. How could it be blocked with one hand? Yiguchen's ancient god power surged in his arm and crushed the sword with a crack. He punched the young man's chest and sent him flying while vomiting blood. At this time, two more sword lights, one from the left and one from the right, stabbed towards Yiguchen. Obviously, these three people were the prodigies of the ridge. They had gathered together and attacked at the same time to steal the other person's token. Yiguchen reached out with both hands and grabbed the two sword lights. "Who are you? A prodigy on the sword list?" One of the young men was shocked. "Impossible, you're only at the 3rd stage. Another young man was in disbelief. The three of them were all at the 5th stage of the spirit bridge of heaven and earth. How could they lose to a 3rd stage spirit bridge of heaven and earth? Ignorant. Yiguchen struck out with a backhand attack, sending the two of them flying. The three of them rolled into a ball. Their chests were in pain and they could not gather their true chi. "Hand over your tokens or die." Yiguchen did not want to waste time talking. He was not a kind person. "Here." The three of them did not dare to act rashly and handed over their tokens. There were 5 tokens in total. Obviously, in addition to their own tokens, they had obtained 2 more tokens. Yiguchen took the tokens and left. Looking at Yiguchen's back, the 3 young men swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Their eyes were still filled with fear. "Damn it, we've hit a wall this time. Who is this person? How can he be so powerful?" One of the young men said angrily. "Do you think he's the sword demon?" Another young man said with lingering fear. "How is that possible? He's only at the 3rd stage of the spirit bridge of heaven and earth. It's just that his body is abnormally strong. Let's go. It's good enough that he spared our lives. Let's go rob the others." The remaining young man sighed. Things like this were happening all over the misty forest. Many sky prides who had been keeping a low profile began to show off their strength, displaying strength that shocked everyone. Chapter 884. After that, another 2 days passed. Yiguchen did not meet anyone from Tianfeng Ridge, nor did he meet anyone from Purple Smoke Ridge or Yellow Dragon Ridge. After all, the entire maze forest was quite large, so it was impossible to meet them all at once. In these 2 days, Yiguchen also met many prodigies. Of course, these prodigies were like chickens and dogs in front of him, unable to withstand a single blow. Yiguchen quickly collected enough tokens. 21 tokens. Yiguchen counted his gains. He only needed to walk out of the maze forest to pass the level. However, at that moment, Yiguchen suddenly sensed a strong fluctuation of spirit energy. Could it be a quasi-sage medicine? Yiguchen raised his eyebrows slightly. His figure flashed, and there was a lush forest in front of him. Vaguely, there was a strong spirit energy dissipating, and there was also the sound of water splashing. A spirit spring? Yiguchen was slightly surprised. Yiguchen was about to go forward to investigate when suddenly, a bald head jumped out of the bushes. There were 9 marks on the bald head, shining brightly and reflecting light. Yiguchen focused his gaze and found that it was a little monk who looked to be about 12 years old. He was wearing a monk's robe and his face was chubby. He even looked a little cute. However, at that moment, the little monk had a perverted smile on his face. His mouth was open, and saliva was dripping from the corner of his mouth as he stared at the spirit spring. In the depths of the spirit spring, a beautiful figure in yellow was sitting cross-legged and absorbing spirit energy. The rising spirit mist wet the girl's dress, outlining the beautiful lines that would make one's imagination run wild. It was obvious that the little monk was lustful about something. Yiguchen's eyes dimmed. Suddenly, a faint blazing color appeared on the back of his hand. A golden sword mark faintly appeared. "This is the sword sex sequence emblem." "Why?" Yiguchen frowned, full of doubts. Why would the sequence emblem have such a strange reaction? Could it be? Yiguchen suddenly looked at the young monk. The little monk seemed to have sensed something as well. He raised his meaty hand and turned his gaze towards Yiguchen. Rustle. The little monk's actions made a sound. Who is it? The yellow-clothed girl abruptly opened her eyes. Her pretty face was flushed with shame and anger. She was the proud daughter of the Shangguan clan, Shangguan Yen. He was also one of the outstanding geniuses in the selection of the 5 academies. Oh my God! The small monk jumped 3 feet high and hurriedly ran towards Yiguchen. You perverted little monk, you still want to run. Shangguan Yen saw that shiny forehead, and her delicate body flashed as she flew over. Just as the little monk was about to escape, a flying sword landed in front of him, blocking his path. You've been peeping? Shangguan Yan's body was boiling with true qi, evaporating the water on her clothes. She gnashed her teeth and fiercely glared at the little monk. Amitba! Lady Benefactor, this little monk was secretly protecting you so that you wouldn't be harmed by a sneak attack. The little monk put his palms together in a solemn manner. However, his eyes were slightly sneaky as they swept over Shangguan Yan's beautiful chest. You perverted little monk, you need to be taught a lesson. Shangguan Yen raised her eyebrows and stretched out her jade-like hand. The flying sword landed in her hand and she stabbed it towards the little monk. Big brother, save me. The little monk's chubby cheeks trembled. His figure flashed and he landed beside Yiguchen. Yiguchen frowned slightly, but he didn't say anything. You're also with this perverted monk? Shangguan Yen glanced at Yiguchen. A 3rd stage heaven and earth spirit bridge was no threat. No. Yiguchen answered honestly. Big brother, you can't treat your little brother like this. The little monk said with tears in his eyes. He looked like an abandoned child. However, Yiguchen felt that the little monk was not simple. If you're not, then get out of the way. I'm going to teach this little pervert a lesson. Shangguan Yen shouted. Amitba! This little monk is being kind and secretly protecting Lady Benefactor. How can you slander me like this? The little monk had a compassionate look on his face. However, no matter how he looked at it, he felt like he was asking for a beating. That's enough. He's just a child. Yiguchen lightly shook his head. It wasn't that Yiguchen was being kind. It was that the little monk was able to cause a reaction from the sword sex sequence emblem. This made Yiguchen somewhat curious. When 2 sword sect sequence emblems met, the sequence emblem would indeed react. However, the reaction caused by the little monk was not that kind of reaction. This was what made Yiguchen curious. Do you think I'll let him go just because you said so? Shangguan Yen did not say anything more. In her opinion, there was no need to waste words with someone at the 3rd stage of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. The aura of the 9th stage of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge erupted from Shangguan Yan's delicate body. The Shangguan family was also a fake sage family in the Sword Dao Alliance. Its foundation was not inferior to the Hua family. Pear Blossom Rain Sword. Shangguan Yen pointed her sword. The sword light was like a rain of flowers, covering Yiguchen and the little monk. Yiguchen flipped his wrist and took out his long sword. His eyes flashed and the aura of the 3rd stage erupted. However, the vigorous fluctuation of true qi was not much weaker than that of the 9th stage. What's going on? Shangguan Yan's pretty face changed. She had never imagined that the true qi of Yiguchen's 3rd stage cultivation would be more vigorous than her 9th stage true qi. After breaking through the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge, the true terror of the ultimate sea of qi was revealed. Yiguchen's sword resonated with the void. He directly used the ultimate move of the Great Void Sword Wave, the Void Destruction. Rumble. The 2 sword moves collided. Shangguan Yan's delicate body retreated continuously. Her big eyes were filled with horror as she looked at Yiguchen. She was one of the most dazzling geniuses in the 5 academies selection. However, she was defeated by a nameless youth. However, there were always some dark horses in the 5 academies selection. Shangguan Yen was not too surprised. Who are you? Shangguan Yan's eyes were filled with shock. Dugubai, Yiguchen said indifferently. Dugubai, I'll remember you. Shangguan Yen looked deeply at Yiguchen. Then she stared fiercely at the little monk. And you little pervert, I'll teach you a lesson sooner or later. After saying that, Shangguan Yen tapped the ground with the tip of her foot. Her body was as light as a swallow as she flew away. Big brother, you're too powerful. I admire you. The little monk's eyes sparkled as he stared at Yi Guchen. Who are you? Yi Guchen asked indifferently. My name is Kong Kong. The little monk scratched his head and said with a simple and honest smile. However, after seeing Kong Kong's character, Yi Guchen did not think that he was a simple and honest person. Where are you from? This was what Yi Guchen was most interested in. He wanted to understand why Kong Kong would cause the sequence insignia to react. I came from where I should come from and went to where I should go. Kong Kong pretended to be profound. Speak human language, Yi Guchen said indifferently. He would not be fooled by Kong Kong. Ahem. I'm sure you've heard of my senior brother. I follow him, Kong Kong said. Who's your senior brother? Yi Guchen raised his eyebrows. Sword Monk Xuanlian, Kong Kong said. Fourth on the sword ranking, Sword Monk Xuanlian. Yi Guchen's eyes flashed. Chapter 885. Yi Guchen had learned about the sword ranking before. The genius ranked fourth on the sword ranking was called Xuanlian, who was also known as the Sword Monk. He was also a rising genius who had defeated many geniuses on the sword ranking and jumped to fourth place. Yi Guchen did not expect Kong Kong to be the Sword Monk Xuanlian's junior brother. Do you know about the sword faction? Yi Guchen asked. Who doesn't know about the sword faction in the Nantian region? Kong Kong said. You're not from the Nantian region? Yi Guchen's eyes flashed. My senior brother and I came from the West Brilliance region, Kong Kong said. One of the 9 regions, the West Brilliance region. Yi Guchen looked thoughtful. It seems that to really understand the abnormal reaction of the sequence insignia, I still need to find the Sword Monk Xuanlian. I heard that Xuanlian is studying at Sacred Cliff College, one of the 5 major colleges, Yi Guchen muttered to himself. This time, Kong Kong probably wanted to pass the selection and join Sacred Cliff College with his senior brother. Even so, Yi Guchen made up his mind. Anyway, for him, as long as he had enough resources, it did not matter which college he joined. After all, Yi Guchen did not need the guidance of a so-called famous teacher. Not to mention that he had Su Qingyu, a heavenly tribulation saint, who was more qualified to teach him than any other famous teacher. Be careful. Goodbye. Yi Guchen was about to leave. Hey wait, I think we're fated to be together. Kong Kong hurriedly ran to Yi Guchen and said shamelessly. Your strength is not bad. Yi Guchen took a deep look at Kong Kong. He looked no more than 12 years old, but his cultivation was at the 5th stage of the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth. With such talent, he could be considered a monstrous genius. Yi Guchen also felt that Kong Kong's constitution was not ordinary. It was very likely that he was also a genius above the 7th stage. I'm not as strong as you, big brother. From now on, you're my big brother, and I'm your little brother. How could Kong Kong let go of the opportunity to cozy up to Yi Guchen? He shamelessly followed him. Up to you. Yi Guchen did not care. He was also very curious. What was the relationship between the Xuanlian and Kong Kong from the Western Brilliance domain and the sword faction? Where did the abnormal movement of the sequence insignia come from? However, in order to solve this mystery, he still needed to find the Xuanlian. Yi Guchen had a feeling that if he found Xuanlian, he might be able to learn some of the true secrets and truths of the sword sect. On the following day, Yi Guchen and Kong Kong walked together in the misty forest. With the two of them working together, they had already collected over 40 tokens. Even if they ignored the 10 tokens that Kong Kong had, Yi Guchen still had over 30 tokens left. TSK Tianfeng Ridge is really miserable. They were forced into a valley by the people of Purple Smoke Ridge and Yellow Dragon Ridge. There is no way out. Yeah, some of the nearby geniuses have gone to watch the show. Let's go and have a look too. In the misty forest, 2 young men walked together and talked to each other. Where is that valley? Suddenly, a cold voice sounded. The 2 young men suddenly stopped. 2 figures appeared in the mist in front of them. It was Yi Guchen and Kong Kong. Another prey has come to our door. The two young men sneered when they found that Yiguchen and Kong Kong were at stage 3 and stage 5 respectively. They did not hesitate and attacked directly. In the misty forest, everyone was an enemy except for their companions. Boom, boom. However, in just a few breaths, the two young men were beaten to the ground. Their noses were bruised and their faces were swollen. They coughed up blood. Damn it, who are you? The two young men were terrified. A stage 3 heaven and earth bridge youth was so strong that they were shocked. How dare you provoke my big brother? Are you looking for death? Kong Kong was a monk, but he was smirking. Where are the people of Tianfeng Ridge? Yiguchen asked coldly. In the valley 100 miles away. The two young men trembled. After Yiguchen took their tokens, he went to the valley with Kong Kong. The two young men looked at Yiguchen's back and looked at each other. There was still fear in their eyes. Purple Smoke Ridge and Yellow Dragon Ridge are in trouble this time. In a deep valley in the misty forest. A group of people were hiding inside. They were the people of Tianfeng Ridge. Qin Paisai, Su Wenbin, Su Jingjing, Zhuo Qiuqing, and Jin Lang were all there. However, Han Lingxian was not there. At this moment, all of the Sky Prides from the Skywind Ridge were covered in bruises and injuries. Damn it. Our Skywind Ridge has lost more than 10 people. Zhuo Qiuqing gritted her teeth. Her shoulder was also bleeding. After entering the misty forest, Qin Paisai and the others tried their best to gather everyone together. As for Yiguchen, because of his performance in the 3 heavenly gates and his stage 3 cultivation, Qin Paisai and the others did not take him seriously. They did not take the initiative to find Yiguchen. After gathering, Qin Paisai and the others moved together to take the tokens. However, they were still found by the people of Purple Smoke Ridge and Yellow Dragon Ridge. Not only did they form an alliance, but Yuan Kuei also joined in. In the end, they forced the people of Tianfeng Ridge into this valley. Sister Lingxian lured Yuan Kuei away for us, but we can't escape from danger. Qin Paisai gritted her teeth, tears in her eyes. In order to share the pressure of Tianfeng Ridge, Han Lingxian lured the strongest person, Yuan Kuei, away with herself. Even so, the people of Tianfeng Ridge were still forced into a desperate situation by the people of Purple Smoke Ridge and Yellow Dragon Ridge. Qin Paisai had never felt so powerless before. Are we going to die here? Zhen Lang's face was also very ugly. Killing was not forbidden in the misty forest. If Zi Yusin and Huang Feiyun were determined to kill them, the people of Tianfeng Ridge would very likely be wiped out. Humph, that Yiguchen said he would protect us. Where is he hiding now? Su Jingjing bit her lips so hard that they were about to bleed. The fear of death made her body tremble. I already said that he was unreliable. We are finished now. Su Wenbin's face was also ashen. At this moment, outside the valley, Zi Yusin and Huang Feiyun stood indifferently. Behind them stood 4 geniuses of the sword roll, Gong Yangming, Nye Qian, Zhong Yan, and Zhao Yifei. In addition, there were more than 30 geniuses from the 2 ridges combined. This was an overwhelming force. At least, Tianfeng Ridge was almost powerless in front of this force. Putting everything else aside, just the 4 geniuses of the sword roll were enough to defeat all the geniuses of Tianfeng Ridge. Tianfeng Ridge is really miserable. In the past, they were always targeted by the 2 ridges. I think Purple Smoke Ridge and Yellow Dragon Ridge are serious this time. They want to completely destroy the younger generation of Tianfeng Ridge. Who can stop the 4 geniuses of the sword roll? Around the secluded valley, many people also cast their gazes over. Tianfeng Ridge was surrounded by 2 ridges, so there was no lack of spectators. They all wanted to know how miserable Tianfeng Ridge would be in the end. Chapter 886. Heh, what a pathetic bunch of rats. Huang Feiyun's expression was calm and indifferent. It was as if victory was already in his grasp and everything was within his control. Let's not waste any more time. A trapped beast will still fight. Zi Yusin sneered. What can they do with the 4 prodigies of the sword roll here? Huang Feiyun sneered. The 4 prodigies of the sword roll stepped out at the same time, and a terrifying wave of genuine qi surged out. Gong Yangming, who was ranked 75th, was already at stage 8 of the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth. The remaining prodigies, Nie Qian, Zhong Yan, and Zhao Yifeng, were all at stage 7. On the other hand, the prodigies of the Skywind Ridge were mostly at stage 5 or stage 6. In terms of martial techniques, the prodigies of the Skywind Ridge were no match for the prodigies of the Sword Roll. Ziyusin, Huang Feiyun, are you really going to kill the Skywind Ridge? Qin Paisai and the others stood at the entrance of the valley, their faces dark and gloomy. If you knew this would happen, why did you seek refuge with the Hua family? Is it that difficult? Huang Feiyun said indifferently. The current sword alliance has been turned into a mess by those aristocratic families. My father will absolutely not rely on those aristocratic families that cause chaos. Qin Paisai gritted her teeth tightly as she spoke. How dare you? Ziyusin shouted. Nie Qian, one of the 4 geniuses on the sword roll, smirked coldly. She slapped the air with her jade-like hand, and a powerful force landed on Qin Paisai's face, sending her flying. She coughed up blood. Princess! The prodigies of the Skywind Ridge were all shocked. Qin Paisai's face turned purple. She wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth and looked coldly at Huang Feiyun, Ziyusin, and the others. Huang Feiyun's eyes flashed and he said, Hee, I'm not a heartless person. If anyone is willing to seek refuge with us, I'm willing to accept them. Of course, this is your only chance. If you miss it, then none of you will be left alive. His cold voice resounded throughout the valley. Some of the prodigies who were watching the show shrunk their necks. Huang Feiyun and Ziyusin were truly ruthless and decisive. Of course, no one said anything, and no one was willing to lend a helping hand in the face of injustice. In the Sword Dynasty, the strong were respected, not to mention that participating in the selection of the 5 academies was life-threatening. Many people looked at the Tianfeng Ridge camp, wondering what they would choose. Many of the Sky Prides from Skywind Ridge gritted their teeth, and some of their expressions changed. Especially the 2 siblings, Su Wenbin and Su Jingjing. They definitely didn't want to die here. In the end, after struggling for a while, the Su siblings looked at each other and walked toward Huang Feiyun. Young Master Su, what are you doing? Qin Paisai asked in disbelief. Su Wenbin had been pursuing her and had always maintained a good image in front of her. But now, Su Wenbin and Su Jingjing were planning to defect to the enemy. Princess, life is the most important thing in this world. Why throw away your life for nothing? I advise you to surrender as well. Keeping your life is the most important thing. On the brink of death, Su Wenbin could no longer maintain his disguise. Although he wanted to win Qin Paisai's favor, if he lost his life, he would be neglecting the essentials. Some of the other Sky Prides from Skywind Ridge also walked out with the Su siblings. A wise man submits to circumstances. Don't worry, when the new lord takes over Skywind Ridge, your Su family will remain the same. Huang Feiyun laughed. Thank you, young Master Huang. Su Wenbin cupped his hands and bowed deeply to Huang Feiyun and Ziyusin. Qin Paisai was so angry that her face turned pale. Only Zhuqiu Qing, Jin Lang, and a few other Sky Prides were left beside her. Don't waste your breath. This bitch is as stubborn as her father. Attack, Ziyusin said coldly. Kill. The 4 Sky Prides from the sword ranking didn't attack, but the Sky Prides from Purple Smoke Ridge and Yellow Dragon Ridge attacked together. Young Master Su, since you've chosen our side, shouldn't you make some contributions? Huang Feiyun said playfully as he looked at Su Wenbin and the others. All right. Su Wenbin and Su Jingjing's expressions changed. After gritting their teeth, they didn't hesitate and attacked their comrades who had been on the same side. Su Wenbin, Su Jingjing, you bastards, this princess really misjudged you. Qin Paisai's voice was mournful and shrill as she shouted. Her beautiful eyes were bloodshot. Boom. Su Jingjing's palm landed on Qin Paisai's chest, causing her to spit out blood. She said indifferently, I'm sorry, Princess Qin. We just want to live. We've been blind to be on the same side as you bastards. Zhuqiu Qing raised her sword and attacked valiantly. Unfortunately, she couldn't do anything. After being pushed back by Su Wenbin, she was suppressed by the sky prides from the two ridges. Qin Paisai and the others were in danger. After another collision, Qin Paisai's blood and qi surged in her chest. She spat out a mouthful of blood. "Don't move. Let me deal with her personally." Ziyusen twisted her waist and rushed toward the seriously injured Qin Paisai. Her jade-like hands were fierce and attacked Qin Paisai's face. One could imagine that if this attack hit, Qin Paisai's head would definitely explode like a watermelon. "Am I going to die? I can't accept this." Qin Paisai bit her lip until it bled. Facing Ziyusen's killing move, she only felt bitterness in her heart. She closed her eyes and endured it. However, death didn't come as she expected. She heard the exclamations of the surrounding crowd. She also heard Ziyusen's surprised exclamation. Qin Paisai slowly opened her eyes. A slender and skinny figure stood in front of her, blocking her path. With one hand, he grabbed Ziyusen's wrist that was attacking him. Ziyusen struggled in that person's hand like a caught chick. Duguwubai. Qin Paisai's eyes slowly focused. When she saw that calm face, Qin Paisai's brain short-circuited for a moment. Duguwubai had come to save her? "It's you." Ziyusen looked at the youth who suddenly blocked in front of her and suddenly understood. She had seen this person at the Swordless Temple. However, he was only at the third stage of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. He didn't attract any attention at all. But now, Ziyusen's killing move was easily blocked by Yiguchen. "You guys are really courting death." Yiguchen's palm grabbed Ziyusen's wrist. Ancient god power surged as he fiercely squeezed. A shrill scream came out from Ziyusen's mouth. Her wrist was directly broken by Yiguchen. Ziyusen's delicate body retreated. Her beautiful face was distorted because of the pain. She stared at Yiguchen with resentment. She didn't believe that Yiguchen would be so strong. She only thought that Yiguchen had launched a sneak attack. "Duguwubai, what are you doing here? Hurry up and leave." Qin Paisai gritted her teeth and said. She didn't think that Yiguchen could change anything by coming here. At most, he would save another life. "I never go back on my words." Yiguchen's mouth curved into a cold arc. The origin ring on his fingertip flashed and a sword light appeared. With a sword in hand, all sides bowed. Chapter 887. Yiguchen had a slender figure and wore a black robe. He held a sword in one hand and pointed it at the ground, while the other hand was behind his back. His expression was cold and indifferent. The blade reflected the sharpness of the sword. It was the aura of a Sword Dao Grandmaster. The purple smoke ridge, the yellow dragon ridge, the sky wind ridge, and all the spectating prodigies were stunned by this sudden scene. Originally, everyone thought that the Skywind Ridge would be wiped out and no one would survive. But at the last moment, Yiguchen appeared. What everyone found strange wasn't Yiguchen's actions, but his cultivation. What could a third-stage Heaven and Earth Bridge cultivator do in this situation? Aside from the 30 to 40 prodigies from the Purple Smoke Ridge and Yellow Dragon Ridge, there was also Ziyusen and Huang Feiyun. Most importantly, there was also Gong Yongming and the other 3 prodigies from the sword ranking. This was a situation that was practically set in stone, and almost no one could shake it. Everyone was curious. What gave this black-robed youth the confidence to stand out at this moment? "Duguwubai, go. Don't stay here. Go find Sister Lingxian." Qin Paisai bit her lips and shouted. She thought that Yiguchen was a liar who cheated her father of the spirit Bodhi. But Qin Paisai was still kind and didn't want Yiguchen to die in vain. She wanted him to go find Han Lingxian. "Han Lingxian, what's wrong?" Yiguchen's eyes darkened. Han Lingxian had been of great help to him. Previously, at the Skywind banquet, she had even knelt down and begged Qinzhen to help Yiguchen obtain the spirit Bodhi. If something happened to Han Lingxian, Yiguchen wouldn't be at ease. "Heh, you still have the time to care about others. I'm afraid that woman has already been subdued by young Master Yu." Huang Feiyun revealed a meaningful smile. Boom. Just as Huang Feiyun finished speaking, a terrifying blood-colored killing intent swept out from Yiguchen's body like a storm. The surrounding temperatures seemed to have dropped to the freezing point. This scene caused the expressions of all the Sky Prides to change slightly. What a strong killing intent. It seems that the black-robed young man is not ordinary. He's clearly only at stage 3, but that killing intent made me feel terrified. Some of the Sky Prides who were watching from afar felt a chill run down their spines. Do you really think that I won't kill you? The sword in Yiguchen's hand was buzzing and trembling, as if it could not help but thirst for blood. You're just a third-stage prodigy, yet you dare to talk about killing me? If it weren't for your sneak attack, how could I have been injured? Ziyusen glared at Yiguchen with incomparable resentment. Even Su Wenbin, Su Jingjing, and the others thought that Yiguchen was overestimating himself. Trying to be a hero at this time was simply courting death. Yiguchen did not say a word. His eyes were as cold as the moon setting and the crows crying. Go! Ziyusen coldly shouted. A total of 30 to 40 Sky Prides from the Violet Smoke Ridge and the Yellow Dragon Ridge surrounded Yiguchen's group. Among them, the weakest was at the 4th stage of the Heaven and Earth Spiritual Bridge. Most of them were at the 5th stage or 6th stage. With so many people surrounding them, even the weaker Sky Prides on the sword ranking would not be able to withstand it. Retreat! Qin Paisai, Zhuoqiuqing, and the others' faces changed. They only had 6 or 7 people left, and they were all injured. It was impossible for them to break out of the encirclement. With Big Brother Dugu here, don't worry, don't worry. At some point, a little monk stood beside Qin Paisai and the others and laughed. Who are you? Qin Paisai and the others could not help but retreat. They had not noticed this little monk at all. I'm Big Brother Dugu's little brother, Kong Kong. Kong Kong put his palms together. However, no one from the Skywind Ridge was in the mood to pay attention to this little monk. Just as Qin Paisai was about to lead the remaining Sky Prides to attack with Yiguchen, screams of agony rang out continuously. Then Qin Paisai, Zhuoqiuqing, and the others saw an unforgettable scene. Yiguchen was dressed in black, and the sword in his hand vibrated. He took a step forward and appeared so close yet so far. Every time he landed beside a Sky Prides, there would be blood splattering and screams of agony would be heard. Yiguchen, alone with his sword, seemed to have transformed into thousands of people as he swept through the area. In front of his sword, there was no difference between the 4th stage, 5th stage, and 6th stage Sky Prides. All the Sky Prides were like cabbages in his hands, and he could cut them down at will. Yiguchen swung his sword, and a severed arm flew out. Yiguchen's sword vibrated, and it pierced through the heart of a Sky Pride. Yiguchen's sword swept across, and a head flew out. Everyone's minds went blank. Qin Paisai opened her mouth in a daze. The scene in front of her made her heart tremble. Are my eyes playing tricks on me? Zhuoqiuqing and the others were also stunned. Ziyusen and Huang Feiyun were also petrified, and their minds seemed to have been struck by lightning. It felt as if they were a little white rabbit a moment ago, and the next moment, they had become a white tiger. This sudden turn of events stunned everyone present. A 3rd stage Heaven and Earth Bridge Sky Prides killed a group of 4th stage, 5th stage, and 6th stage Sky Prides, and blood splattered everywhere. No, how could that Dugu Bai? Su Wenbin and Su Jingjing were also stunned, and they could not recover for a long time. Ah, devil, he's a devil. Run! Finally, after Yiguchen killed more than 15 people in a row, the remaining 2 Sky Prides could not withstand the pressure of death and fled in all directions. Damn it, all of you come back. Huang Feiyun's face was ashen as he shouted coldly. His gaze was fixed on Yiguchen. At this moment, everyone knew that although the young man in front of them was only a 3rd stage Heaven and Earth Bridge Sky Prides, his combat strength was far beyond his apparent cultivation level. Generally speaking, this kind of person was the most difficult to deal with. This was because no one knew where his limit was. Please help me. Ziyusen's delicate body trembled when she saw the flowers of blood blooming. She finally understood that Yiguchen could injure her not because of a sneak attack. It was because Yiguchen had the strength to do so. Ziyusen was not stupid. Based on Yiguchen's current combat strength, she was afraid that even she could not defeat him. Her only hope was the 4 sky prides on the sword roll. After the massacre, Yiguchen's black robe was not stained with blood. Drops of blood dripped from the tip of his sword. His gaze was indifferent as he looked at the people from the 2 great ridges and the 4 sky prides on the sword roll. At this moment, in the eyes of Qin Paisai and the others, Yiguchen's figure was like a towering pillar that supported the heavens. 1 man and 1 sword. He could summon clouds and rain with a flip of his hand. It seems that we've all misjudged this time. Gong Yangming smiled faintly. After all, they were sky prides on the sword roll. They still had the bearing that they should have. After seeing Yi Guchen's strength, although there was a trace of seriousness in their eyes, their expressions were still indifferent. If they were facing Yi Guchen alone, perhaps they would be wary. However, there were now 4 sky prides on the sword roll on their side. If the 4 of them joined forces, it would be enough to deal with Hua Xingjie, Shangguan Yen, Gui Jianchou, and the other sky prides on the sword roll who were ranked in the top 20. You're Dugubai, right? You do have some skills. Let me take you on. Among the 4, Zhao Yifeng, who was ranked the lowest at 86th, took a step forward and said indifferently. His tone was as if he thought that it was beneath him to fight as a sky pride on the sword roll. Why go through so much trouble? The 4 of you, come at me together. Yiguchen held the sword in his right hand and placed his left hand behind his back. His tone was indifferent. A sharp and proud peerless edge bloomed from Yiguchen's body. At this moment, the young man was incomparably dazzling and eye-catching. Chapter 888. When Yiguchen said that, the sky prides around the valley who were watching the show felt their scalps go numb. They looked dazed as if they had heard the most unbelievable thing. Yiguchen wanted to challenge 4 sky prides on the sword roll alone. This caused everyone's minds to tremble. Dugubai, have you gone mad? Qin Paisai's body trembled in disbelief. Qin Paisai was extremely surprised by Yiguchen's combat strength. She even thought that Yiguchen was definitely qualified to be on the sword roll. However, it was a little too much to say that Yiguchen wanted to challenge 4 sky prides on the sword roll by himself. Sky prides who could be on the sword roll were not ordinary people. If they went all out, even Hua Xingjie and the other sky prides on the sword roll would not be able to gain any advantage. Qin Paisai was not the only one who thought so. Everyone else thought so too. Is he digging his own grave? Huang Feiyun and Ziyusen sneered when they saw this. In their opinion, Yiguchen was too arrogant. However, who really knew Yiguchen's background? After Yiguchen's true qi cultivation recovered, he had never used his full strength. Yiguchen also wanted to test his strength through battle. Therefore, he did not hesitate to ask Gong Yangming and the other 3 to attack together. Only then would he be qualified to use his true strength. Yiguchen did not need to explain, and he was too lazy to explain to others. His gaze was as sharp as a sword as he looked at Gong Yangming and the others. If you join forces, we can still fight. If you don't want to, that. Yiguchen was not a kind person to begin with. In the misty forest, killing was not forbidden, so Yiguchen did not need to hold back. You're too arrogant. Zhao Yifeng shouted angrily. His figure flashed as he charged toward Yiguchen. In his opinion, Yiguchen's action was looking down on him. Zhao Yifeng could not tolerate it. Sword of Gale! Zhao Yifeng roared, and Tiandi Lingxiao's true qi completely erupted. The sword edge swept towards Yiguchen like a gale. The surrounding sky prides were shocked when they sensed the fluctuation. As expected of a genius on the sword list. Huang Feiyun and the others nodded in satisfaction. Just a casual move from him was already so powerful. However, Yiguchen's lips curled into a cold arc. The sword in his hand trembled as he took a step forward. He used so close, yet worlds apart. After recovering his qi cultivation, Yiguchen's various martial arts and movement techniques were able to display their full strength. With this step, he appeared in front of Zhao Yifeng in a flash as if he was shuttling through the void. Do you want to die? Zhao Yifeng sneered when he saw Yiguchen take the initiative to collide with his sword. Immortal murdering sword technique, immortal fall. Yiguchen's eyes were cold as he swung his sword horizontally. Vigorous true qi gushed out of Yi Guchen's body like a volcanic eruption and poured into the sword edge. The extremely sharp sword qi gushed out as if it had turned into a scene of a group of fallen immortals. When the sword was swung, that kind of fierce fluctuation swept out in all directions. The entire valley was rumbling and trembling as a terrifying storm of sword qi swept out. The moment Yi Guchen made his move, everyone was shocked. Splat. Blood spurted out. Yi Guchen's figure appeared behind Zhao Yifeng. Zhao Yifeng's figure seemed to be frozen as he stared blankly at the void. Time seemed to have stopped at this moment. Qin Paisai, Zhuqiuqing, Zhen Lang, Ziyusin, Huang Feiyun, and even Gong Yangming were stunned. A line of blood slowly appeared on Zhao Yifeng's neck, and then blood burst out. Gulp. Zhao Yifeng's head rolled down. Everyone's gaze froze at this moment. Endless shock surged out from everyone's hearts. This. Qin Paisai, Zhuqiuqing, and the others trembled. Huang Feiyun and Ziyusin's eyes were even more prominent as stormy waves surged in their hearts and their minds buzzed. Gong Yangming and the other 3 sword roll prodigies were also stunned. One of the sword roll prodigies was killed in an instant. The surrounding people were shocked. The prodigies who were watching the show could not hide the shock in their eyes as they looked at the indifferent youth. Poor youth. Gong Yangming's back was covered in cold sweat. Even if it were him, it would be impossible for him to kill Zhao Yifeng in an instant. Moreover, in their eyes, Yi Guchen was only a third-stage heaven and earth bridge cultivator. The person who will kill you. Yi Guchen's tone was indifferent. At this point he no longer had anything to hide. He was going to completely reveal his edge. Only in this way could he successfully enter the 5 academies. Therefore, Yi Guchen no longer had any scruples and directly attacked. God-slaying sword technique, Permitha. Yi Guchen's figure flashed and endless blood-red sword qi gushed out, turning into countless beautiful but deadly Permitha flowers that attacked Gong Yangming and the others. Attack together! Gong Yangming roared. At this point, they couldn't care less about their identities. The 3 sword roll geniuses attacked together. Guyuan sword technique. Shadowless sword technique. Great mountain splitting sword technique. Gong Yangming, Nie Qian, and Zhong Yan, the 3 sword roll prodigies, attacked together against Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen's sword changed again and a terrifying sword technique that could destroy everything was unleashed. Dugu's 9 sword techniques, sword breaking technique. 1 sword to break all techniques. It directly broke all the sword techniques of Gong Yangming and the other 2. Yi Guchen's sword was like a rainbow from the 9 heavens, free and unrestrained. Splat. Blood splattered everywhere. Zhong Yan's eyes popped out, and his body stopped moving. A bloody hole appeared in his chest and came out through his body. The sword-breaking technique had pierced through his heart. Another sword roll prodigy had fallen. The second one. All the surrounding prodigies were terrified. Yi Guchen killed 2 sword roll prodigies with 2 moves. Qin Paisai and the other Skywind Ridge prodigies were completely confused. They felt that it was unreal, as if they were in a dream. This young man had been silent and had endured their cold words. At this moment, he was like a peerless sword that had completely bloomed its own sharpness. I was wrong, so wrong. Qin Paisai muttered absent-mindedly. Damn it. Gong Yangming's face was extremely gloomy, and the hand holding the sword was trembling uncontrollably. No, how could this be? Nie Qian's face was pale, and her delicate body was trembling like a sieve. At the Sword Roll Divine Palace in Thunder City, she had mocked Yi Guchen for only having a Stage 3 cultivation base. But now, this Stage 3 prodigy was like the god of death, and everyone was terrified. It's not over yet. Yi Guchen swung his sword again and swept it horizontally. Clang. The sound of the swords colliding was like a sudden clap of thunder. Gong Yangming and Nie Qian retreated continuously, coughing up blood from the corners of their mouths. The 2 of them together could not block Yi Guchen's sword move. Damn it, who is this person? Gong Yangming roared in his heart. Both of them retreated rapidly. They had chosen to retreat. Damn it, let's retreat too. Huang Feiyun and Ziyusin looked at each other and saw the fear in each other's eyes. This time, they had kicked an iron plate. You want to leave now? Yi Guchen's eyes were cold. The sword's edge is not stained by the wind, and the blood will not stop for 1,000 miles. Yi Guchen was free and unrestrained. His black hair danced in the wind, and his eyes were filled with disdain. He was like the king of hell, ruling over life and death. Chapter 889. The air was filled with the thick smell of blood. Purple Smoke Ridge and Yellow Dragon Ridge were lying in pools of blood one after another. Ziyusen, Huang Feiyun, Gong Yangming, Nie Qian, and the rest, including the 2 remaining prodigies, were fleeing in all directions like desperados. The surrounding prodigies were speechless when they saw this scene. Who would have thought that all the prodigies from the 2 ridges and the 4 prodigies from the sword roll could not kill Yi Guchen? Instead, they were being chased by Yi Guchen. Moreover, their escape was useless. Yi Guchen's imminent skyline was too fast. No one could escape Yi Guchen's pursuit. The wind did not stop. The sword did not stop. The blood did not stop. A dazzling sword light flashed towards the fleeing Nie Qian. "Spare me!" Nie Qian's face turned pale as her delicate body trembled. She had never imagined that she would end up like this. Yi Guchen's face was indifferent. He did not show any mercy because Nie Qian was a woman. A beautiful head flew out. Nie Qian's beautiful eyes were wide open as if she could not believe that she would die in such a way. "Stop, we don't have to fight to the death. I was only bewitched by Huang Feiyun. You don't have to stand up for Skywind Ridge either." Gong Yangming was scared out of his wits when he saw Nie Qian being killed in one strike. Although his ranking on the sword roll was the highest among the 4 prodigies, he was not much stronger than Yi Guchen. Moreover, the other 3 prodigies on the sword roll were all killed by Yi Guchen in one strike. It was impossible for Gong Yangming to do so. "It's just for a promise." Yi Guchen did not show any mercy and attacked with his sword. Seeing that Yi Guchen had no room for negotiation, Gong Yangming's face also surged with a crazy look of desperation. But in the end, Gong Yangming's throat was slit by Yi Guchen's sword. After killing Gong Yangming, Yi Guchen looked off into the distance. He took another step forward and flew off. In the dense fog of the dense forest, Ziyusen and Huang Feiyun were frantically fleeing. Damn it! Where did Tianfeng Ridge find such a dangerous person? Ziyu's heart beat violently as a strong sense of crisis welled up in its heart. That person could it be? Huang Feiyun seemed to have suddenly thought of something, and his face froze. "You're saying impossible?" Ziyusen also thought of something and shook her head frantically. She didn't want to believe it, nor did she dare to believe it. "Can you escape?" In front of Huang Feiyun and Ziyusen was a figure with his back facing them. The tip of his sword was pointed at the ground, and drops of blood dripped down the tip of the sword. Spare us. What did Tianfeng City Lord give you?" "Treasures? We can give you anything. As long as you let us go, we will definitely treat you well." Huang Feiyun's voice trembled slightly. As the young lord of the mountain ridge, he had never been so humble. "Yes, we can give you anything you want. Even if you want me, it's fine." Ziyusen's lips were trembling. She was even willing to give up her body to Yi Guchen to spare her life. "My promise is as heavy as Mount Tai." Yi Guchen's expression was still indifferent. Since Qin Zhen had given him the spirit Bodhi, Yi Guchen had to fulfill his promise. Although Qin Zhen and Qin Paisai didn't believe him at first, Yi Guchen couldn't go back on his word because of this. At this moment, even if Huang Feiyun and the others took out the sacred medicine, they wouldn't be able to exchange for their lives. Yi Guchen didn't delay any longer. The tip of his sword vibrated and swept out. Puchi, Huang Feiyun and Ziyusen's faces were twisted with fear, and their bodies froze. "You really are." Huang Feiyun and Ziyusen covered their necks with their hands. Their eyes bulged out as they stared at Yi Guchen. "I know what I'm doing. There's no need to say it out loud." Yi Guchen turned around and left. "I hate it." Huang Feiyun and Ziyusen's faces were filled with unwillingness and regret. If they had known that the young man in front of them was the sword demon who had caused 3 rays of light to illuminate the world in the first round, they wouldn't have made a move no matter what. Unfortunately, there was no medicine for regret in this world. With a plop, the two of them fell into a pool of blood. The remaining two geniuses of the mountain ridge were just some small fries. Yi Guchen couldn't be bothered to chase after them. He returned to the canyon. Qin Paisai and the others were still there. The traders Su Wenbin, Su Jingjing, and the others had already escaped. Seeing Yi Guchen arrive safely, the surrounding geniuses who were watching the show couldn't help but suck in a breath of air. Their eyes were filled with shock. Many people looked at the bloody sword in Yi Guchen's hand and understood everything. None of the geniuses on the sword ranking had survived. Qin Paisai and the others were also shocked. "Are you all okay?" Yi Guchen asked indifferently. Not dead. Those people." Qin Paisai's words were somewhat stuttering. "They're all dead," Yi Guchen said indifferently. Although they had a hunch, Qin Paisai and the others still couldn't believe it. "Where's Han Lingxian?" Yi Guchen asked. "She lured Yu Yuankue away to share the burden. She should be heading in that direction." Qin Paisai pointed at the fog. "Pei Kongkong, you stay here and take care of things." Yi Guchen's face was indifferent. He took a step forward and flashed away. "Is the god of slaughter going to provoke the Yu family?" Some of the onlookers couldn't help but exclaim. The Yu family wasn't a family that anyone could provoke. Not to mention, there was also Yu Shuangyan, ranked 27th on the sword ranking. Sister Lingxian was right. We and even father misjudged him. Qin Paisai shook her head with a bitter smile. "Do you think that Dugawubai is?" Zhuqiu Qing thought of something and stopped herself. This can't be." Qin Paisai's delicate body shook. Although Yi Guchen's performance had surprised her, she didn't think in that direction. After all, the sword demon who had broken Hua Wuxiu's sword moves and even made 3 brilliant lights illuminate the world was too far away from ordinary geniuses like them. However, on second thought, this seemed to be the only reasonable explanation for Yi Guchen's stunning performance. "Maybe our Skywind Ridge has really picked up a treasure this time," Qin Paisai said absent-mindedly. It wasn't hard to imagine that Yi Guchen's identity had been confirmed. The impact of that would be immense. All the geniuses would be overshadowed by his brilliance. No matter in the end, we have to witness it with our own eyes. Quickly recover from your injuries. Qin Paisai and the others took out elixirs to adjust their breathing. They wanted to witness Yi Guchen's true identity. On the other side, in the depths of the misty forest, a beautiful figure in sapphire blue was running. Her body was covered with wounds and blood was still oozing out. Her delicate face was very pale because of her weakness and injuries, making her look pitiful. Behind her, a figure had a mocking look on his face as he looked at the fleeing beauty. "The beauty, do you think you can escape?" The person chasing her was Yu Yuankue. He was ranked 65th on the sword ranking and was at the 8th level of the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth. He was stronger than Gong Yangming and the others. He wasn't someone that Han Lingxian could fight against. I wonder if Paisai and the others have escaped danger. And young Master Dugu, I hope we don't meet the people from the 2 great ridges, Han Lingxian thought to herself. At such a critical moment, she was still worried about the safety of others. Chapter 890. You must be worried about the people from Tianfeng Ridge. Don't worry. With Huang Feiyun and the others surrounding them, the people from Tianfeng Ridge will not be spared. Yu Yuankue smiled faintly. You will also suffer retribution. Han Lingxian gritted her teeth and said with a pale face. She knew in her heart that there was no way she could escape from Yu Yuankue. However, even if she died, Han Lingxian would not let Yu Yuankue have his way. No matter what, the Yu family is still a family in the Swordway Alliance. Who dares to take revenge on me? But you, Beauty, Huang Feiyun and the others were willing to spare your life because of me. Instead of being grateful, you chose to escape. You really disappoint me. Yu Yuankue shook his head and sighed. You are a beast in human clothing. Disgusting. Han Lingxian said as she tried to activate the genuine qi in her body, trying to escape. Yu Yuankue's eyes were filled with mockery. He swept the long sword in his hand, and streaks of sword qi rushed toward Han Lingxian. However, it was not to kill Han Lingxian. It was just like a cat toying with a mouse, causing more wounds to appear on her body. Han Lingxuan's skirt was torn, revealing her slender legs. Her dress was also torn in many places, revealing her creamy skin. Together with the blood that oozed out, it was a glaring sight. Han Lingxian bit her lips tightly, knowing that Yu Yuankui was teasing her. "Ha, come here." Yu Yuankui stretched out one hand, and a vigorous genuine qi rushed toward Han Lingxian. Han Lingxian blocked with her sword, but she spat out another mouthful of blood. Yu Yuankui's body flashed, and he formed a seal with one hand to suppress Han Lingxian. Han Lingxian felt extremely bitter. Although she was not weak, there was still a huge gap between her and Yu Yuankui, who was on the swordway list. Seeing that she was about to be suppressed by Yu Yuankui, Han Lingxian gritted her teeth and held the sword in her hand, wanting to cut her own neck. Seeing this, Yu Yuankui flicked his finger, and a stream of genuine qi shot out, blowing away the sword in Han Lingxuan's hand. "Come here." Yu Yuankui had completely suppressed the Zhen qi in Han Lingxuan's body, and was about to embrace Han Lingxuan's waist with one hand. Han Lingxuan's face was filled with despair. Who would have thought that she wouldn't even be able to kill herself in front of a prodigy on the sword ranking? "Is this my ending?" Han Lingxian smiled sadly. As one of the 3 great geniuses of the Chuyan dynasty, she came to the Sword Dynasty to explore. She thought that she could enter the 5 great academies and cultivate wholeheartedly. However, Han Lingxian would never have thought that she would end up like this. Han Lingxian closed her eyes in despair. She, who had always been strong, actually shed 2 lines of tears from the corners of her eyes. Feeling that her waist was being held by a strong arm, Han Lingxian bit her lips hard. She was in despair. However, at this moment, a familiar faint voice sounded in his ears. "Sorry I'm late." The young man's calm voice was like the sound of nature at this moment. Han Lingxian was shocked. She opened her beautiful eyes in disbelief and saw the side of a handsome face. It was Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen hugged her slender waist, and her body moved back, avoiding Yu Yuankui's evil claws. "It's you!" Yu Yuankui's face froze, and he stared at Yi Guchen. His eyes were filled with endless resentment and anger. It was because of Yi Guchen that he had suffered such humiliation at the Tianfeng banquet. Yu Yuankui would never forget this for the rest of his life. "Young Master Dugu, why are you here?" Han Lingxian felt dizzy, as if she was dreaming. She was like a person on the verge of collapse in the darkness. In the end, a ray of light suddenly appeared. Yi Guchen was that ray of light. At this moment, her slender waist was hugged by Yi Guchen, and his warm masculine breath made Han Lingxuan's pale face blush. Since young, Han Lingxian had focused on swordsmanship, and she had never been so close to a man of the opposite sex. However, the crisis was not over yet. Han Lingxian did not know Yi Guchen's strength, so Yi Guchen's appearance made her even more worried. "Young Master Dugu, leave quickly. Don't worry about me. We can't deal with you Yuankui," Han Lingxian said hurriedly. Looking at Han Lingxian, who was still thinking about him at this moment of despair, Yi Guchen's eyes were deep. He looked at Han Lingxuan's body again, and the big and small wounds on her body, and her torn skirt, which made her look so miserable and glaring. Yi Guchen's eyes were filled with coldness. "Let go of her for me." Seeing Yi Guchen hugging Han Lingxian, Yi Yuankui's face darkened even more. Han Lingxian was about to become the meat in his mouth. Who would have thought that such an unforeseen event would happen? However, in Yu Yuankui's eyes, Yi Guchen was only at the 3rd level of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. "Wait for me." Yi Guchen put down Han Lingxian, holding the long sword in his hand, his expression indifferent. "Young Master Dugu, don't be rash." Seeing this, Han Lingxuan's face changed. She did not expect that Yi Guchen would want to fight with Yu Yuankui. "Are you courting death? Even if you have refined the spirit Bodhi, you are only at the 3rd level." Yu Yuankui's eyes were filled with ridicule. "That's enough. Go accompany Huang Feiyun and Ziyusen." Yi Guchen said indifferently. Where are they?" Yu Yuankui's eyes narrowed slightly as he felt that something was wrong. 9 nether yellow springs. As Yi Guchen's words fell, his body flashed, and a terrifying amount of true qi burst out. God-slaying sword technique, Permitha. With a slash of the sword, the blood-red sword qi turned into countless red spider lilies, spreading across the sky and surrounding Yu Yue. This. Yu Yuankui's mind shook as he hurriedly blocked with his sword. With a loud bang, Yu Yuankui's body retreated dozens of steps. Traces of sharp sword qi slashed across his cheek, bringing out traces of blood. How is this possible? Your strength. Yu Yuankui looked as if he had seen a ghost. The Yi Guchen in front of him was clearly only at the 3rd level, but the power of this attack shocked him, in 8th level Heaven's Pride. Not far away, Han Lingxuan's jade-like face also seemed to have frozen. She had only seen Yi Guchen's physical strength before. This was the first time she had seen Yi Guchen's true strength. This kind of strength shocked Han Lingxian to the point of speechlessness. Is this the true strength of young Master Dugu? Han Lingxian muttered absent-mindedly. I really misjudged. Yu Yuankui stared at Yi Guchen, his face extremely ugly. Yi Guchen did not say a word, but slashed out again. The God-slaying sword technique and the immortal slaying sword technique were used one after another. Yu Yuankui also slashed out at the same time. The full strength of the 8th level of the Heaven and Earth spiritual bridge burst out. After all, he was ranked 65th, and his strength was much stronger than Gong Yongming and the others. In addition, the Yu family was a prosperous family, and they had many superior martial arts techniques. Therefore, Yi Guchen could not kill Yu Yuankui as he had killed Gong Yongming and the others. Your strength is indeed beyond my expectations, but it will not change the outcome. Yu Yuankui pointed his sword to the sky, and powerful sword qi gushed out. Sky-severing sword technique. Yu Yuankui roared, and the sword qi gushed out for dozens of feet, falling down on Yi Guchen. Huh? An imperial-level sword technique? Yi Guchen's eyes were indifferent. He also used an imperial-level sword technique, and vigorous vital energy poured into the blade. As the sword edge buzzed and trembled, there seemed to be an extremely sharp sword qi swallowing and spitting out. Yi Guchen slashed out with his sword. A bright silver sword light hundreds of feet long, rushed out with a destructive aura, as if it wanted to sweep through the 9 heavens and the galaxy. That is, the holy sword trifecta. Han Lingxian exclaimed. Chapter 891. What Yi Guchen was using was the royal-level sword art, the 3 ultimate holy swords. There were 3 basic moves in the 3 ultimate holy swords, and Yi Guchen was using the first move, the star-breaking sword art. The dazzling silver sword radiance swept toward Yu Yuankui, as if it was going to cut through the stars in the sky. The shock in Han Lingxuan's eyes couldn't be erased. Learning in royal-level sword art wasn't something that could be done in a day. There were many people who spent a few years or even 10 years to learn an royal-level sword art. However, it hadn't been long since Yi Guchen comprehended the royal sword steel, and Yi Guchen was already able to use the star-breaking sword art. Han Lingxian had also obtained the cultivation method of the 3 ultimate holy swords, but she was only at the entry level and couldn't even use the power of the star-breaking sword art. In comparison, Yi Guchen's monstrous talent was obvious. Boom! Yi Guchen's star-breaking sword art collided with Yu Yuankui's sky-severing sword art, and an endless wave of sword qi spread out in all directions. In such an extreme collision, the one who was at a disadvantage wasn't Yi Guchen, but Yu Yuankui. Thump, thump, thump. Yu Yuankui's body trembled, and the hand holding the sword trembled slightly. He took dozens of steps back, and his eyes were fixed on Yi Guchen. He was a genius ranked 65th on the sword ranking, but he was forced to retreat by an unknown youth. Who would believe it if word got out? Who are you? Yu Yuankui's playful and relaxed expression was replaced by a serious one. He wasn't stupid. He knew that Yi Guchen's cultivation level was too deceptive, and it didn't match his real combat strength. The person who will kill you. Yi Guchen didn't say anything, and continued to attack. The silver sword radiance seemed to be able to split the sky, and it swept out, causing the air to scream. Yu Yuankui blocked with his sword. The two of them collided, and their swords collided. Dazzling sparks flew everywhere. Looking at Yi Guqin fighting Yu Yuankui, Han Lingxian was completely dazed. It was only now that Han Lingxian realized how much she had underestimated Yi Guqin. Not only her, but Qin Jin, Qin Paisai, and all the other geniuses of the Skywind Ridge had underestimated this unknown young man. The true strength that he displayed at this moment was definitely comparable to that of a prodigy on the sword list. Moreover, he was one of the top geniuses. Young Master Dugu, just how deep are you hiding? Could it be that you're really… Han Lingxian covered her red lips with her jade-like hand. She seemed to have thought of something, and her heart was in turmoil. Her beautiful eyes unconsciously widened. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that this might really be the case. Boom! After another attack, Yuankui's chest shook violently, and he coughed up blood. There was a hint of fear in his eyes. Although Yi Guqin's cultivation was only at stage 3, his swordsmanship, movement, and genuine qi were all better than Yu Yuankui, who was at stage 8. Today, with Yi Guqin here, he would not be able to get the beauty as he wished. Thinking of this, Yu Yuankui wanted to retreat. At worst, he would go find Yu Shuangyan later. With Yu Shuangyan here, Yi Guqin would be suppressed. At that time, Yu Yuankui would still be able to get Han Lingxian as he wished. After making up his mind, Yu Yuankui swung his sword again. A powerful sword radiance swept across and blocked Yi Guqin's attack. Then he quickly retreated and was about to leave. Yi Guqin's eyes flashed. He broke Yu Yuankui's move with his sword and used so close, yet worlds apart. His body seemed to pass through the void as he flashed toward Yu. Seeing this, Yu Yuankui was shocked. He could not help but shout, "I'll retreat. Are you really going to force me? I've said it before. You'd better not attack, or you'll regret it for the rest of your life." Unfortunately, Yi Guqin shook his head slightly and said indifferently. Yi Guqin had warned Yu Yuankui outside the remains of the honorable swordsman. Hearing this, Yu Yuankui's face tightened. At that time, he had not experienced Yi Guqin's true strength. Why would he care about his warning? I'm from the Yu family. Yu Shuangyan is also participating in this selection. Are you really not going to give her any leeway? Yu Yuankui gritted his teeth. He had turned from the hunter to the prey. Now, he had to bring up his family background and Yu Shuangyan. Yu Shuangyan was a heaven's favorite, ranked 27th on the sword roll and was at stage 9 of the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth. Yu Yuankui did not believe that Yi Guqin would not have any scruples. Unfortunately, not only did he not know Yi Guqin's strength, but he also did not know his character. What Yi Guqin was least afraid of was threats. Yi Guqin's genuine qi burst out and activated so close, yet so far. It was as if he had broken through space. He swept directly in front of Yu Yuankui and slashed down with his sword. Yu Yuankui blocked with his sword and was sent flying again. Because in the selection of the 5 academies, no external force could be used. Therefore, Yu Yuankui did not have any life-saving treasures. Secret skill of blood soul. Yu Yuankui was on the verge of death. His face was ferocious, and he was no longer as relaxed as before. His sea of consciousness and sea of qi seemed to be burning. His genuine qi, which was already vigorous, surged again. All his genuine qi gathered on the blade of his sword and exploded with his strongest sword. But Yi Guqin's face was cold. He turned the long sword in his hand, and the sword light illuminated the 9 heavens. A magnificent blue sword light appeared like a crescent moon. The magnificent blue crescent moon turned into an arc of sword qi and swept toward Yu Yuankui. Wherever it passed, the sharp sword qi cut through the air and roared violently. This powerful move was the second move of the 3 ultimate holy swords, the absolute sword of Kuan-Yu. Han Lingxian's eyes were shocked, and her heart was in turmoil. Han Lingxian was surprised that Yi Guqin could fully comprehend the star-breaking absolute sword in such a short time. But now, the absolute sword of Kuan-Yu was also displayed. Could it be that young Master Dugu has fully comprehended the 3 ultimate holy swords? Han Lingxian was completely stunned. What a monstrous talent! What a monstrous strength! Han Lingxian was almost 80% sure that Yi Guqin was the mysterious sword demon. Boom! The magnificent and deep crescent moon sword broke Yuankui's sword momentum and flashed past, flattening a large area of the ancient forest behind Yu Yunkui. Yu Yuankui's body was also frozen in place. His eyes turned numbly, staring at Yiguchen with extreme resentment. "Yu Shuangyan and the Yu family will not let you go." Puff. A bright line of blood appeared from Yu Yuankui's forehead. His whole body was cut in half by the crescent moon sword light. Looking at the dead Yu Yuanhe, Yiguchen's expression was calm. Once he entered the academy, the Yu family could not do anything to him. As for Yu Shuangyan, the only people who could make Yiguchen take seriously were the top 10 geniuses on the sword ranking. As for Yu Shuangyan, who was ranked 27th, she was not a threat to Yiguchen. Young Master Dugu, looking at Yu Yunkei, who was killed by the absolute sword of Kunyu, Han Lingxian could not calm down for a long time. Chapter 892. Yu Yunkui, ranked 65th on the sword ranking, had died so easily at the hands of Yiguchen. Yiguchen's sword was pointed diagonally. His expression was calm, and his posture was relaxed. It seemed to him that killing a prodigy on the sword ranking was not a big deal. Young Master Dugu. Han Lingxian wanted to say something, but stopped. "You're seriously injured." Yiguchen's gaze turned to Han Lingxian. Han Lingxian wanted to say something, but she felt a wave of extreme weakness and exhaustion hit her. Han Lingxian had been on tenterhooks before. Only now, with Yu Yuankui's death, did Han Lingxuan's tense heartstrings finally relax. The large amount of blood loss made her dizzy, and she fell forward. Finally, she landed on a broad and warm chest. Yiguchen frowned slightly, holding the unconscious Han Lingxian. He brought her to a pool of water. After a moment of hesitation, he treated her wounds and applied medicine. Then, he took out a healing pill and stuffed it into Han Lingxuan's mouth. After a day, Han Lingxian slowly woke up. As soon as she opened her eyes, she saw Yiguchen sitting cross-legged not far away, meditating. Han Lingxian was slightly confused at first. Then, she suddenly realized that the wounds on her body had been treated and were beginning to heal. Could it be? Han Lingxuan's delicate face unconsciously turned slightly red. She also realized that Yiguchen must have treated her wounds while she was unconscious. However, Han Lingxian still believed in Yiguchen's character. Yiguchen would not do anything to her. Yiguchen was really a person who was greedy for beauty. Back in the Chuyan dynasty, Yiguchen could have used the 3 ultimate holy swords as a condition to marry the 3 sisters. Han Lingxian blushed when she thought about how Yiguchen had seen her body. But in her heart, she didn't feel too disgusted. However, the shyness in Han Lingxuan's heart was quickly replaced by curiosity. She looked at the young man who was sitting cross-legged and adjusting his breathing. His breathing was long and deep, and her curiosity grew. "Miss Han, you're awake." Yiguchen slowly opened his eyes. There was a faint smile on his lips. "Thank you, young Master Dugu, for wanting to save me." "Lingxian is eternally grateful," Han Lingxian said sincerely. Although she and Yiguchen were friends, they weren't particularly close. For her sake, Yiguchen had actually killed Yu Yuankui and provoked the Yu family. This made Han Lingxian feel extremely guilty. "Miss Han has also helped me a lot. It's just a small matter." Yiguchen smiled. "If you don't mind, you can call me Lingxian," Han Lingxian said softly. Yiguchen nodded slightly. Young Master Dugu, could you really be?" Han Lingxian couldn't help but ask. "Since you already know, why do you have to say it out loud?" Yiguchen smiled faintly. Han Lingxuan's face froze when she heard this. Although she already knew, Han Lingxian still couldn't hide the shock in her heart when it was actually confirmed. The young man in front of her was the one who had broken Hua Wuxiu's sword technique at Tianfeng Ridge. He was also the one who had suppressed the top 3 of the sword leaderboard at the 3 great heavenly gates and had attracted 3 brilliant lights. Han Lingxian couldn't help but puff up her cheeks and roll her eyes at Yiguchen when she thought about how she had been kept in the dark. "Young Master Dugu is so naughty," Han Lingxian was shocked when she finished speaking. Her tone was too coquettish, as if she was flirting. She blushed slightly and secretly observed Yiguchen. Yiguchen didn't care about Han Lingxuan's coquettish and charming appearance. 2 hours later, Yiguchen and Han Lingxian left to meet up with Qin Paisai and the others. Did you get the token? Yiguchen asked casually. Not yet. We just came in and were targeted by Huang Feiyun and the others. We didn't have time to get the token. Han Lingxian shook her head. Here. Yiguchen took out 10 tokens. This. Han Lingxuan's beautiful eyes widened as she stared blankly at Yiguchen. There was a rare kind of dazed cuteness in her appearance. What's wrong? Yiguchen tilted his head. No, nothing. Young Master Dugu, you really gave Lingxian a big surprise. Han Lingxian accepted the tokens. She thought to herself that with Yiguchen's talent, the 5 academies selection was easier than eating and drinking for him. Half an hour later, Yiguchen and the others found Qin Paisai. Sister Han Lingxian, it's good that you're okay. Qin Paisai hugged Han Lingxian, feeling a lingering fear. It was young Master Dugu who saved me. Han Lingxian was also happy. This time, they could be considered to have survived a disaster. What about Yun? Qin Paisai probed. He's dead, Han Lingxian said truthfully. Qin Paisai, Zhuqiu Qing, Zhen Lang, and the others were shocked. Although they had expected it, they couldn't help but suck in a breath. After all, after killing Yu Yuankue, that Yushuang Yen definitely wouldn't let Yiguchen go. It's going to be troublesome. Qin Paisai was worried. Although the Purple Smoke Ridge, Yellow Dragon Ridge, and Yu Yuankue's crisis had been resolved, another great enemy had appeared. However, it attracted an even bigger enemy, Yushuang Yen. It's okay. Han Lingxian smiled faintly. She knew that with Yi Guchen's strength as a sword demon, he would definitely be able to enter the academy. At that time, even the Yu family wouldn't dare to touch the academy's disciples. The 5 academies were under the Sword Dao Alliance, and in the Sword Dynasty, no one would dare to openly attack the academy's disciples. After that, the Skywind Ridges group gathered enough tokens with Yi Guchen, Kong Kong, and the others. 7 days had finally passed. In the depths of the Honorable Sword ruins, outside the bewildering forest, numerous figures had been waiting for a long time, and they were all lords of various ridges and aristocratic families. The Skywind Lord, Qin Zhen, stood with his hands behind his back. Although that dignified face looked calm, one could vaguely see some nervousness in the depths of his eyes. In the previous 5 academies selections, the Skywind Ridges prodigies were targeted by the Purple Smoke Ridge and Yellow Dragon Ridge in the second round, resulting in their complete annihilation. But this time, it was different. His daughter, Qin Paisai, was among them. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't worried. Lord Qin, are you worried? A purple-clothed man laughed. It was the Purple Smoke Lord. Of course he's worried. After all, his daughter is among them this time, another yellow-clothed man said. He was the Yellow Dragon Lord, and he was also laughing coldly. Qin Zhen had rejected their good intentions and refused to join the Hua family. Therefore, he had to be prepared to be annihilated. If you don't listen to good people, you'll suffer. This time, not only will you lose your position as Lord, you won't even be able to protect your daughter, the Yellow Dragon Lord said mercilessly. The Hua family is an aristocratic family that brings disaster to the country. I, Qin Zhen, will never join you. Although Qin Zhen's expression was ugly, he was still unyielding. In the past few years, the Hua family, the Yin family, the Jiang family, the Shangguan family, and other pseudo-saint aristocratic families in the Sword Dao Alliance. They caused chaos in the country, disrupted order, and subdued many lords. It seemed that they wanted to dominate the Sword Dao Alliance. As for the rogue cultivators in the Sword Dao Alliance, they were greatly suppressed by these aristocratic families, and their power was rapidly reduced. As a rogue cultivator, Qin Zhen naturally didn't want to become a lackey of the aristocratic families. You won't cry until you see the coffin, the Purple Smoke Lord and the Yellow Dragon Lord sneered. They were very calm and thought that the outcome was already decided. The people from the Skywind Ridge would definitely be annihilated under the encirclement of the 2 ridges. Chapter 893. While everyone was waiting, numerous figures began to walk out from the bewildering forest. In fact, Many prodigies had already collected enough tokens on the second or third day and walked out of the forest. For example, Hua Xingjie, Yin Wufeng, Shangguan Yan, Yushuang Yan, Gui Jianchou, Yan Chou, and other prodigies. At this moment, a pretty girl in a yellow dress with a scorpion tail braid was staring at the exit of the maze forest. She was Shangguan Yan from the Shangguan family. She had always remembered how Shangguan Yan had been pushed back by Yi Guqin in the maze forest. Dugu Bai, don't tell me you can't even pass the second round? Shangguan Yan's eyes darted around. She didn't hate Yi Guqin. She was just curious that a nameless young man like Yi Guqin was actually a dark horse. Of course, Shangguan Yan didn't think of Yi Guqin as the sword demon. After all, in everyone's eyes, the sword demon was an existence that could stand shoulder to shoulder with top prodigies like Hua Wuxiu. He wasn't on the same level as them. Why hasn't he come out yet? Yushuang Yan stood on the other side with a cold expression. She frowned slightly. After so long, Yu Yuankue still hadn't come out. No matter what, Yu Yuankue was still a member of the Yu family. Yushuang Yan couldn't ignore him. As time passed, more and more prodigies walked out one after another. Most of them had injuries on their bodies. Looks like it's about time, the venerable who was in charge of the selection said lightly. On the other side, the Purple Smoke Lord and the Yellow Dragon Lord also frowned. Although no prodigy from the Tianfeng territory had appeared. However, the prodigies from their two territories hadn't appeared either. Why hasn't he come out yet? The Purple Smoke Lord asked in a low voice. Maybe it took a lot of time to encircle and annihilate the people from the Tianfeng territory, the Yellow Dragon Lord said. Qin Zhen secretly clenched his fist and sighed in his heart. Was it right or wrong for me to trust Duguwubai? Qin Zhen sighed in his heart. A group of people flashed out of the maze forest. They were Yi Guqin, Qin Paisai, and the others. Father! When Qin Paisai saw Qin Zhen, she couldn't help but feel joy in her heart. Pei Si! Qin Zhen's body shook, and his clenched fists trembled slightly. The heavenly son of Skywind Ridge had come out. Although there were far fewer people than when they had first entered, Qin Paisai and several other important geniuses were still present. This was already a great surprise for Qin Zhen. How is this possible? The eyes of the Purple Smoke Tribal Lord and the Yellow Dragon Tribal Lord trembled. The heavenly son of Skywind Ridge had come out, but not a single person from their two territories had appeared. Father, this time it's all thanks to young Master Dugu, Qin Paisai said. She couldn't help but look at Yi Guqin with respect. Many thanks to young Master Dugu. I really didn't misjudge you. Qin Zhen clasped his fists at Yi Guqin. It's no problem. This is a deal between you and me. I'm just fulfilling my promise. Yi Guqin waved his hand. When Qin Zhen heard this, a trace of shame appeared on his face. Even he had been wavering and hesitating, not trusting Yi Guqin and thinking that he had misjudged him. Where are the people from the Yellow Dragon Ridge and the Purple Smoke Ridge? The Yellow Dragon Tribal Lord stepped forward and asked coldly. What about Yusen? Where are they? The Purple Smoke Tribal Lord also asked coldly. From the moment Qin Paisai and the others appeared, they had a bad feeling in their hearts. Do you think I'm nothing? We're still in the middle of the selection. Qin Zhen stepped forward and his aura erupted, blocking the two tribal lords. Tribal lords, please stop arguing. The sovereign in charge of the selection snorted coldly in the sky. I just want to ask where the heavenly son of Yellow Dragon Ridge is. The Yellow Dragon Tribal Lord suppressed his anger. What else can you do? If you want to harm others, you should be prepared to be harmed, Qin Paisai said coldly. After all, the Skywind Ridge had already fallen out with the two territories, so there was no need for them to worry about anything. Moreover, they were still in the middle of the selection. They couldn't blame others for their deaths, so the two tribal lords couldn't take revenge. The faces of the two lords were also solemn and extremely unsightly. How could they not understand that the people from the Purple Smoke Ridge and the Yellow Dragon Ridge, including their sons and daughters, had all been wiped out? Who is it? The Purple Smoke Tribal Lord gritted his teeth, his body trembling. The Skywind Ridge definitely didn't have the ability to deal with them. Not to mention the 4 heavenly sons of the sword ranking. Qin Paisai was at a loss for words. She wouldn't expose Yiguchen. Is it that brat? The yellow dragon tribal lord's eyes were bloodshot as he looked at Yiguchen. At this moment, Yushuangyan walked over with light steps. Seeing Yushuangyan, Qin Paisai and the others' expressions changed. The Skywind Ridge wasn't afraid of the two tribal lords. However, the Yu family was one of the aristocratic families in the Sword Dao Alliance. Even if they didn't have a false saint, their strength was far from what a tribal lord could contend with. Where is Yunke? Yushuangyan's tone was cold as she asked condescendingly. Her aura was so oppressive that Qin Paisai, Han Lingxian, and the others found it difficult to breathe. Because Yu Yuankue had only had conflicts with the Skywind Ridge before, Yushuangyan directly came to find him. Seeing this situation, many people in the surroundings looked over. Yiguchen's body flashed, and he stood in front of the two girls. You have to pay the price for doing wrong, right? Facing Yushuangyan's oppressive aura, Yiguchen was calm and composed. So, Yushuangyan's eyes narrowed, and her face was extremely cold. He's dead, Yiguchen said calmly. What? Yu Yuankue, ranked 65th on the Sword Dao ranking, is dead? Did he die at the hands of this young man? But his aura is only at the 3rd level of the Heaven and Earth spiritual bridge. As soon as these words came out, it caused a small commotion in the surroundings. 65th on the Sword Dao ranking wasn't particularly dazzling, but it wasn't weak either. He was considered one of the best among the geniuses. The surrounding people found it hard to imagine how a Phase 3 prodigy could kill a Phase 8 prodigy. Heh, this Dugubai really knows how to cause trouble. Shangguan Yen pouted, but she was more curious about Yiguchen. TSK, looks like another dark horse. Since he killed Yu Yuankue, he will replace him and become the 65th on the Sword Dao ranking. Many geniuses were paying attention to Yiguchen. However, Hua Xingjie, In Wufeng, and the others still ignored them. They didn't even care about the 65th on the Sword Dao ranking. Yen worried guest, on the other hand, glanced at Yiguchen thoughtfully under his bamboo hat. You have guts. Yushuangyan wasn't very angry, but her cold eyes seemed to be able to freeze people. What Yushuangyan cared about was not Yu Yuankue, but his identity as a member of the Yu family. In her opinion, no one dared to provoke the Yu family, even if it was just killing a dog of the Yu family. He's just digging his own grave. I hope you won't end up like him. Yiguchen didn't want to waste time talking to Yushuangyan. As soon as these words came out, the whole place fell silent. Everyone was stunned. Chapter 894. Who was Yushuangyan? She was ranked 27th on the sword ranking and a 9th phase prodigy. Yu Yuankue couldn't compare to her in terms of strength. In everyone's eyes, even if Yiguchen could kill Yu Yuankue, it was still wishful thinking for him to fight against Yushuangyan. Very good. Yushuangyan nodded, not saying anything. He wasn't angry, nor was he enraged. However, this kind of attitude showed the cold, killing intent in his heart even more. In her eyes, Yiguchen was already a dead man, so there was no need for her to be angry with a dead man. Sigh. Young friend Dugu, this is going to be troublesome. Qin Jin frowned. Yiguchen and the others had offended Yushuangyan, so the 3rd stage wouldn't be peaceful. However, Qin Paisai chuckled and said, Father, you don't have to worry about that. Qin Jin was surprised. He realized that Qin Paisai, Han Lingxian, and the others didn't seem to be worried about Yiguchen offending Yushuangyan. Father, listen to me. Qin Paisai whispered in Qin Jin's ear. What, is this true? Qin Jin's body trembled as he looked at Yiguchen. Even with his temperament, he couldn't help but take a deep breath in disbelief. We really chose the right person this time. Qin Jin sighed. At this moment, 2 more figures appeared in the misty forest. They were Su Wenbin and Su Jingjing. They had completed their mission by a hair's breadth. Their eyes flickered, and they didn't dare to approach the people from Skywind Ridge. The people from Skywind Ridge also looked coldly at the Su siblings. Traitors were sometimes more hateful than enemies. Big brother, what should we do now? Su Jingjing's face was as pale as paper. They were like pigs in a mirror. They were no longer human. Now that Huang Feiyun and the others were dead, Skywind Ridge couldn't accept them. After all, Su Jingjing didn't show any mercy to Qin Paisai. There's only one way. Pass the last stage and join the academy, Su Wenbin said. That was their last chance. Alright, the second stage is over. Next, we'll count the tokens. Those who pass will rest on the spot for 3 days before facing the challenge of the final stage. High in the sky, the Venerable One spoke loudly. After that, the tally of tokens was completed. There were about 500 to 600 heavenly talents who passed the second round. It could be said that thousands of soldiers and thousands of horses were crossing a single plank bridge. However, the third stage would be even more difficult than the second stage. What's the third trial? Yi Guchen asked. The third test is to ascend the Thunder Prison Mountain. There is no chance of luck or trickery. It is completely dependent on one's own strength. Han Lingshuan's tone was slightly solemn. Obviously, the third test of the Lightning Prison Mountain wasn't going to be easy. In the second stage, although they had to rely on their own strength, they could also rely on their teammates or luck to pass. However, in the third stage, there was absolutely no chance of luck. What exactly is the Lightning Prison Mountain? Yi Guchen asked curiously. This sword Honorable Ruins belongs to the Lightning Sword Honorable. His sword, the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison, is at the peak of the Lightning Prison Mountain. This mountain is also named after this sword. Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison. Yi Guchen's eyes flashed. Han Lingxian had previously told him that the sword of the Lightning Sword Honorable was a heavenly tribulation divine weapon. However, it had fallen to a quasi-heavenly tribulation divine weapon because it was damaged. I'm sure young Master Dugu has heard of the person who forged the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison, Han Lingxian said with a smile. Oh, who is it? Yi Guchen asked. South Forging Divine Hands, Forging Sky Edge, Han Lingxian said with respect. Yi Guchen was slightly taken aback. He didn't expect the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison sword to be a divine weapon forged by the old drunkard. Rumor has it that when the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison sword was forged, many rare materials were added and the souls of 9 dragons were integrated. Therefore, the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison sword possesses an extremely strong thunderous dragon aura. When it is placed at the peak of the Lightning Prison Mountain, it attracts thunderbolts from the sky all year round and forms a thunder tide. Not only that, because of the 9 dragon souls, some strange thunder spirit creatures have been formed on the Lightning Prison Mountain. They are quite powerful. Hearing Han Lingshuan's tone, Yi Guchen knew that the Lightning Prison Mountain was definitely not easy to break through. However, if it is a divine weapon forged by Senior Forging Sky Edge, then I have a better chance of subduing it, Yi Guchen thought to himself. Yi Guchen had learned the true teachings of Forging Sky Edge. Now that the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison sword was an ownerless sword, Yi Guchen naturally had a way to resonate with the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison sword. Of course, the prerequisite was that Yi Guchen had to have the ability to subdue the sword. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. The remaining 500 to 600 Sky Prides also braced themselves for the final round. In the final round, at the end of the Lightning Prison Mountain, the people from the 5 academies would personally witness the ceremony. It was also a chance for them to perform. Young friend Dugu, please. Qin Zhen clasped his hands together and said sincerely. Only when Qin Paisai and the others joined the 5 academies would Qin Zhen be completely at ease. Don't worry, I never make promises easily. Since I have made a promise, I will definitely keep it. Yi Guchen nodded slightly. Then, everyone set off towards the Lightning Prison Mountain in the deepest part of the Sword Sovereign's ruins. About 2 hours later, everyone reached the deepest part of the Sword Sovereign's ruins. Yi Guchen finally saw the Lightning Prison Mountain. The Lightning Prison Mountain was over 1,000 feet tall and stood alone. The entire mountain was baptized by lightning all year round and turned silver. At the top of the Lightning Prison Mountain, countless lightning rays gathered and were extremely bright, making people look down on the scenery inside. Only the faint roar of a dragon and the rumbling of thunder could be heard. A strong dragon might and a lightning attributed might vaguely spread out, inspiring fear in everyone. Once someone steps into the range of the lightning prison mountain, the 9-dragon lightning prison at the top of the mountain will resonate and attract endless heavenly lightning to form a lightning tide. Han Lingxuan's beautiful eyes were solemn. Yi Guchen's eyes were deep. Not only was he not timid, but he was also eager to give it a try. The place where lightning gathered was a rare treasure place to temper one's body. To the others, it was a test. But to Yi Guchen, it was a blessed place. Look, that's the ship of the 5 academies. The Sky Pride was excited as he pointed into the distance. Everyone looked over and saw 5 huge ships floating in the void at the end of the horizon. Obviously, they were the people from the 5 academies. However, the 5 ships were too far away and they could not see the people on the ships clearly. Everyone, the third test is to break through the lightning prison mountain. The entire lightning prison mountain is divided into the lower, middle, upper, and peak. Those who can step into the middle will be able to join the 5 academies. Those who can step into the upper will have a chance to become a bronze emblem disciple. Those who can step into the peak will be fought over by the 5 academies and have a chance to become a silver emblem disciple. In this last test, the people from the 5 academies will be watching. So do your best. Of course, fighting is not prohibited in the lightning prison mountain as long as you have the strength to do so. The honorable master who was in charge of the test said loudly. All the Sky Prides rubbed their palms together and the atmosphere instantly reached its peak. Everyone only had one goal, which was the peak of the lightning prison mountain. Chapter 895. In the Sword Dynasty, prodigies from all 360 ridges gathered to participate in the selection. Their goal was to compete for the opportunity to enter the 5 major academies. As for this final stage, although it was incomparably difficult, not a single person chose to retreat. This was their last chance. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The 500 to 600 prodigies climbed up the lightning prison mountain like a swarm of locusts. The moment a prodigy stepped into the range of the lightning prison mountain, there was a loud bang. Above the lightning prison mountain, dark clouds covered the land. As the clouds rolled, the power of thunder and lightning gathered. At the peak of the lightning prison mountain, a blazing bolt of lightning crossed the sky and rushed into the dark clouds. Rumble, the thick pillar of lightning reached the sky, as if it had built a bridge between the clouds and the lightning prison mountain. Dragon roars sounded continuously. There were a total of 9 roars, and the sound was earth-shattering. Immediately, under the gaze of all the prodigies who were climbing the mountain, endless lightning was drawn down from the clouds and poured into the lightning prison mountain. Then, it turned into a shocking torrent of lightning that poured down. The terrifying torrent of lightning made the corners of all the prodigies' eyes twitch slightly. Boom! The torrent of lightning was extremely fast. In just a short moment, it rushed down from the peak of the mountain. Some of the weaker prodigies were directly blasted out of the range of the lightning prison mountain amidst a series of screams. Those prodigies who were slightly injured spat out blood. Those who were seriously injured were charred black. They were only at the foot of the mountain, and the torrent of lightning was already so powerful. The prodigies could not imagine how powerful the power of thunder and lightning would be at the peak. Fortunately, the 5 academies selection required one to reach the middle level to pass. Therefore, these prodigies were not too afraid. One by one, they used all their means and began to climb. Yi Guchen, Kong Kong, and the rest of the Sky Wind Ridge also began to climb. As soon as Yi Guchen entered the lightning prison mountain, he fell into the range of the torrent of lightning. The power of thunder and lightning might be extremely dangerous to others. But to Yi Guchen, it was not much of a threat. Yi Guchen's body only shook slightly, and he began to adapt to the torrent of lightning. He was surprised to find that the power of lightning was slowly tempering his body. Yi Guchen had relied on the power of saint medicine to recover from his injuries. Although there weren't any major problems, there was still a trace of imperfection. However, Yi Guchen found that his physical body and even his genuine qi were being refined once again in the midst of the thunderstorm. This was a pleasant surprise for Yi Guchen. As for Kong Kong, when the thunder tide hit him, A faint golden light flashed on his body and blocked the thunder tide. On the other hand, Qin Paisai, Han Lingxian, and the others could only use their true qi to defend themselves. They didn't have bodies as strong as Yi Guqin's that could withstand the power of lightning. Yi Guqin's relaxed attitude also attracted a lot of attention. TSK Dugawubai from Tianfeng Ridge is indeed a dark horse. He can actually resist the thunder tide with his physical body. Yeah, if he didn't have a conflict with Yu Shuangyan, he would definitely enter the 5 academies. Some people shook their heads regretfully. Yi Guqin's potential as a dark horse caught everyone's attention. But unfortunately, he had provoked someone he shouldn't have. Everyone knew that Yu Shuangyan would never let Dugawubai and the others have a chance to enter the 5 academies. It was just that she hadn't made a move yet. As time passed, most of the geniuses began to adapt to the impact of the thunder tide. About 100 geniuses were directly blasted away by the thunder tide and completely lost their chance. The remaining 400 to 500 geniuses began to climb. At the forefront were naturally the geniuses who received the most attention. Hua Xingjie held a folding fan, and as he waved it, sword qi surged into the clouds as he tore through the thunder tide in front of him. Yin Wufeng was dressed in black and had a sinister look. His entire body was like a blood-colored sword. With a flash, he parted the thunder tide. Shangguan Yen tapped her toes lightly as she moved agilely. With a slash of her sword, she split the thunder tide into 2. Gui Jianchou was a young man dressed in a gray cloak. As his footsteps flashed, ghostly shadows appeared. The thunder tide was unable to do anything to him. Yanchou was still wearing a bamboo hat. With a flute in hand, he used his Misty Rain illusory sword to withstand the thunder tide. There was also Yu Shuangyan. She didn't target Yi Guqin immediately. Instead, she chose to climb first. To these sword roll geniuses, ascending to the middle ranks was not difficult at all. Their goal was the upper ranks or even the pinnacle. After these top elites formed the first echelon, it was the second echelon, which was Yi Guqin and company. In fact, with Yi Guqin's strength, if he were to climb with all his might, no one would be his match. Even Hua Xingjie was no match for him. However, the thunder tide's tempering powers were greatly beneficial to Yi Guqin. Therefore, he wasn't in a hurry to climb. An hour later, the first echelon, Hua Xingjie and company, had already reached the middle ranks. Yi Guqin and company were about to reach the middle ranks. However, Qin Paisai, Han Lingxian, and company were already extremely pale. They were drenched in sweat. With their strength, they could only reach the middle ranks at best. As for the remaining Skywind Ridge elites, other than Zuoqiu Qing and Zhen Lang, the rest had long been swept away by the thunder tide. Now, only Yi Guqin, Qin Paisai, Han Lingxian, Zuoqiu Qing, and Zhen Lang were left. Hold on for a little longer, Yi Guqin said with a calm expression. His promise was to help Qin Paisai and company enter the 5 great academies. As long as they reached the middle ranks, it would be over. However, at this moment, a bolt of lightning suddenly blasted towards Skywind Ridge. Be careful! Han Lingxian cried out. Yi Guqin flicked his finger. The 6-pulse divine sword transformed into a finger light and collided with the bolt of lightning. However, not far away, the figure of a beast wrapped in lightning appeared. It's a thunder spirit. Qin Paisai bit her lip. The thunder prison mountain was so big, but they just had to encounter a thunder spirit. A thunder spirit was a special existence formed by the special terrain of this place. The closer one was to the upper ranks of the thunder prison mountain, the stronger the thunder spirit's strength. This thunder spirit's aura was roughly comparable to a stage 7 prodigy. Although it wasn't fatal, one had to know that Yi Guqin and company were still resisting the impact of the thunder tide. Under such circumstances, encountering a thunder spirit would be quite troublesome. Don't worry about it. Continue climbing. Leave this thunder spirit to me, Yi Guqin said calmly. But Han Lingxian wanted to say something, but stopped. Don't worry, Yi Guqin said casually. The thunder tide at this level couldn't affect him too much. Yi Guqin wielded his sword and collided with the thunder spirit. However, the sword directly pierced through the thunder spirit. The thunder spirit opened its mouth and roared, spitting out a ball of lightning. That thunder spirit doesn't have a body of flesh and blood. We can only use true energy to disperse it. Qin Paisai shouted. Oh! Yiguchen's eyes flashed as he poured his true energy into the sword. The blood-red sword light spread out and blasted towards the thunder spirit. After a while, the thunder spirit was finally defeated by Yiguchen. A bolt of lightning suddenly entered Yiguchen's body. This is... Yiguchen's eyes were filled with surprise. He felt very surprised. Chapter 896. This ray of lightning was very strange. After it entered Yiguchen's body, not only did it cause the purple void mysterious lightning in his body to move, it also contained a very faint sword concept. Could this be lightning sword essence? Yiguchen's eyes lit up. He did not expect that after killing the thunder spirit, there would be such a harvest. However, the lightning sword essence contained in this ray of lightning was too faint. It was impossible for Yiguchen to comprehend the lightning sword essence with this. Could it be because of the 9-dragon thunder prison sword? Yiguchen could not help but think. The previous owner of the 9-dragon thunder prison, Thunder Sword Venerable, was probably a mighty figure who comprehended the lightning sword principle. Finally, he integrated the lightning sword principle into the 9-dragon thunder prison. If that was the case, if Yiguchen could get the 9-dragon thunder prison, wouldn't it mean that he also had a chance to comprehend the lightning sword principle? Thinking of this, Yiguchen could not help but have a trace of anticipation. For a sword cultivator, the sword principle was the most irresistible temptation. Moreover, Yiguchen was not worried that the sword principle he comprehended would be complicated. He had a premonition that the sword principle was very important to his future cultivation. Therefore, Yiguchen did not reject the lightning sword principle. Just as Yiguchen was pondering in his heart, a few more thunder spirits appeared and blocked Qin Paisai and the others' path to the middle of the mountain. How could this be? Although there are thunder spirits on the Thunder Prison Mountain, most of them are concentrated in the upper and top levels. How could it be so coincidental? Qin Paisai saw the situation and her face turned slightly ugly. Yiguchen's eyes flashed as he suddenly felt a spying gaze in the dark. He flicked his finger and the sword chi finger light blasted behind a mountain rock in the distance. As the gravel exploded, 2 figures flashed and retreated in a panic. It's you! Qin Paisai's eyes were sharp and saw the two at a glance. It was Su Wenbin and Su Jingjing. These thunder spirits were actually lured here by their scheme. Retreat! The 2 siblings of the Su family abruptly retreated. Yiguchen hesitated for a moment before turning to look at Qin Paisai and the others who were trapped by the thunder spirits. He didn't hesitate, temporarily giving up on chasing after the Su siblings. The sword in his hand trembled, and sword light split the sky, sweeping towards the lightning spirits. In less than a quarter of an hour, all of the thunder spirits were dealt with. Strands of lightning also entered Yiguchen's body. Not only did it speed up the tempering of Yiguchen's body, but it also made Yiguchen's true energy much more vigorous and pure. If I can kill a few more thunder spirits, I might be able to break through. Yiguchen thought to himself. Of course, these few strands of lightning were far from enough for Yiguchen to comprehend the lightning sword essence. Those Su siblings are really despicable. Qin Paisai gnashed her teeth in anger. She never thought that the Su siblings would use such a method to deal with them. They won't be able to jump around for long. Let's hurry to the middle level. Yiguchen's tone was indifferent. Qin Paisai, Han Lingxian, and the others nodded. The most important thing for them now was to obtain the qualifications to enter the 5 great academies. Soon, under Yiguchen's lead, Han Lingxian and the others also smoothly approached the middle level. However, at a certain moment, Yiguchen's footsteps abruptly stopped. Young Master Dugu, what's wrong? Han Lingxian and the others also stopped. They were only a few steps away from the middle level. Yiguchen was indifferent, looking indifferently at the slender figure in front of him. The woman's white clothes were as red as blood, her face incomparably cold and arrogant, as if she was always looking down on everyone. Yu Shuangyan. Yi Guchen's tone was indifferent. Du. Qin Paisai and the others' eyes widened as they saw Su Wenbin and Su Jingjing standing behind Yu Shuangyan. They instantly understood. As it turned out, the Su siblings had actually sought refuge with Yu Shuangyan. Yu Shuangyan was too lazy to deal with them, so she ordered the Su siblings to do it. The Su siblings attracted the lightning spirit, but it couldn't deal with the Tianfeng Ridge disciples, so they could only ask Yu Shuangyan to do it. Yu Shuangyan couldn't let the Tianfeng Ridge disciples successfully enter the middle level and enter the 5 great academies. If that happened, it would be difficult to take revenge on Yu Yuankui. After all, even the Yu family couldn't deal with the disciples of the academies for no reason. Damn it! Qin Paisai and the others clenched their fists. They were only a few steps away from the middle level. Once they crossed it, they would be able to enter the 5 great academies. In the end, Yu Shuangyan was like a natural moat, blocking in front of them. Yu Shuangyan wasn't someone that Yu Yuankui and Gong Yangming could compare to. As a genius ranked 27th on the sword roll, her strength couldn't be underestimated. Kong Kong wasn't as worried as Qin Paisai and the others. She looked at ease. It was as if following Yi Guchen wouldn't be an obstacle. I'll give you 2 choices. First, destroy your own cultivation and get out. Second, I'll personally take action. Leave no one in the Tianfeng Ridge alive. Yu Shuangyan clenched her fist, and a long sword that looked like it was made of ice appeared. The blade emitted a chilling aura. Leave no one in the Tianfeng Ridge alive. The lords and people from the aristocratic families who were watching the battle outside the Thunder Prison Mountain fixed their eyes on Yi Guchen and the others. The Purple Smoke Lord and the Yellow Dragon Lord laughed coldly as they looked at Qin Jin. Reincarnation is inevitable. The heavens will spare no one. The Purple Smoke Ridge and the Yellow Dragon Ridge's geniuses had all been killed. The 2 lords were heartbroken, but they couldn't take revenge. At this moment, they could finally witness the destruction of the Tianfeng Ridge with their own eyes. Qin Zhen's expression was solemn, and he didn't say a word. Little friend Dugu, if your identity is really... Qin Zhen thought to himself. If Qin Paisai's guess was true, then Yu Shuangyan was far from being able to stop Yi Guchen's footsteps. On the Thunder Prison Mountain, Yu Shuangyan's expression was cold, but her murderous intent was overflowing. Qin Paisai, Han Lingxian, and the others couldn't help but feel their hearts tighten. The aura of a Stage 9 spiritual bridge of heaven and earth made them feel suffocated. Yi Guchen's gaze was indifferent. With a flip of his wrist, a long sword appeared in his hand. It seems like you're the same as Yu Yuankui. Both of you want to die. Yi Guchen took a step forward and unleashed the full power of his Stage 3 cultivation. His vigorous genuine qi gushed out like a volcano. Qin Zhen's guess was right. Yu Shuangyan was far from being able to stop Yi Guchen's footsteps. Feeling Yi Guchen's explosive aura, Yu Shuangyan's eyes revealed a trace of surprise. However, she still didn't choose to retreat. Her icy sword pierced toward Yi Guchen. Wherever it passed, the ground was covered with a layer of frost. What Yu Shuangyan comprehended was actually also the ice sword Dao. Flying frost sword technique. Yu Shuangyan's Stage 9 aura erupted. Her true energy resonated with the surrounding heaven and earth, amplifying it by 9 times. The biting cold and vigorous sword energy enveloped Yi Guchen. Yu Shuangyan was confident that she could suppress Yi Guchen. Facing Yu Shuangyan's move, Yi Guchen's expression was indifferent. He held the sword in his right hand, raised his left hand, and a pitch-black flame ignited. His hand brushed the blade. Inch by inch, the blade burned with black flames. It was the Nirvana demonic heart flame. Yi Guchen raised his sword. His true energy poured into the blade, causing the demonic flame to surge. A blazing aura rose. The 2 swords collided, and violent sparks erupted. One side was covered with frost and snow, while the other side was scorched earth. Vigorous sword energy rippled like waves, sweeping in all directions. Even the thunderbolts that were rushing down were scattered by the shockwaves. Chapter 897. After the collision, Yu Shuangyan's eyes once again revealed a look of surprise. She couldn't understand how Yiguchen, who was only at the third stage of the spirit bridge of heaven and earth, could have such powerful true qi that he could resist her true qi at the ninth stage. How could this be? Su Wenbin and Su Jingjing were also dumbfounded. In their eyes, Yiguchen had been a cripple without any true qi, but now he could contend with Yu Shuangyan, who was ranked 27th on the sword ranking. This kind of contrast made them feel extremely unreal. Not only them, but the spectators on the outskirts of the Thunder Prison Mountain were also surprised. That young man from Skywind Ridge is a dark horse. He killed Yu Yuankue and the others, but now he can contend with Yu Shuangyan. Doesn't that mean he's at least in the top 30 of the sword ranking? Many lords looked surprised as they turned to look at Qin Zhen. Skywind Ridge had really picked up a treasure this time. Qin Zhen's tense heart relaxed a little, and he let out a deep breath. Damn it! When did such a monster appear in Skywind Ridge? The purple smoke overlord's expression was extremely ugly. Do you think he's? The yellow dragon lord seemed to have thought of something, and his heart skipped a beat. That's impossible. The purple smoke lord's face stiffened. A great battle broke out on the Thunder Prison Mountain. In the surging thunder, Yiguchen and Yu Shuangyan's swords collided. Their figures flashed and they fought fiercely. Normally, these geniuses wouldn't fight unless they reached the end. This was because fighting in the lightning tide consumed too much true qi. If their true qi was used up too much, they wouldn't have enough energy to reach the top. However, this didn't affect Yiguchen at all. Yiguchen could resist the thunder with his body alone. His qi alone was enough to make it difficult for his true qi to be exhausted. However, the situation was not good for Yu Shuangyan. She thought that Yiguchen was at most a little stronger than Yu Yuankue. When it came to the real fight, Yu Shuangyan finally understood how difficult it was to deal with the young man in front of her. Flying Frost Sword Art, 9 Heavens Frost Cry. The longer they delayed, the worse it would be for Yu Shuangyan. Therefore, she directly used the ultimate move of the Flying Frost Sword technique. Although the Flying Frost Sword technique was only a superior king-level sword technique, the power of its ultimate move was no weaker than a lower royal-level sword technique. Void Destruction. Yiguchen also used the ultimate move of the Great Void Sword Wave. The sword edge vibrated in the air and collided with Yu Shuangyan's ice sword. The cold sword energy that could almost freeze the void was directly shattered by the sword wave. Ice Sword Dao, Ice Domain. Yu Shuangyan finally displayed the sword Dao that she had comprehended. To be able to comprehend the sword Dao at this age, even if it was just an ordinary sword Dao, was enough to be called a genius. Unfortunately, the Yiguchen that Yu Shuangyan was facing was not a genius, but a monster. A blood-red light burst out from Yiguchen's eyes. A terrifying blood-red sword essence surged out from his body like a sea of blood. That's Sword Dao. That young man has also comprehended the Sword Dao. Some of the lords who were watching the fight from the periphery were shocked. And it's not an ordinary Sword Dao. The Supreme Azura Sword Dao. One of the lords could feel the killing intent in the blood-red sword energy and couldn't help but change his expression slightly. There was a world of difference between an ordinary Sword Dao and a Supreme Sword Dao. The difficulty and power of comprehending the Sword Dao were also worlds apart. It's the Supreme Sword Dao, the Azura Sword Dao, that is best at attacking. There was quite an uproar around the Thunder Prison Mountain. After all, the Supreme Sword Dao could only be seen in the top 10 geniuses on the sword roll. The lords were indeed surprised that this unknown young man from Tianfeng Ridge actually possessed a peerless sword principle. As expected, Qin Zhen's eyes were also slightly shocked. The appearance of the Azura Sword Dao made Qin Zhen even more certain of Yiguchen's identity. The indifference on Yu Shuangyan's face finally disappeared completely. What replaced it was extreme astonishment. The strength of the young man in front of her had far exceeded her expectations. Yiguchen's lips curled into a cold smile. He wasn't worried that the Azura Sword Dao would expose his true identity. After all, although there were very few people who comprehended the Supreme Azura Sword Dao, it wasn't unique to Yiguchen. I've warned you many times, but unfortunately, you don't know what's good for you. Yi Guchen brandished his sword and performed the god-slaying sword technique. With the enhancement of the Azura sword Dao, the power was even more powerful. In addition, Yi Guchen's cultivation of the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth also made his sword moves more powerful than before. Ice domain, imprison. Yushuang gritted her teeth. Her iceberg-like aloofness was completely shattered in front of Yi Guchen's strength. She could no longer maintain her condescending arrogance. In the surrounding void, icy sword qi condensed as if to form an ice cage, imprisoning Yi Guchen within. Azura blood C18 levels. Yi Guchen's eyes were completely swallowed by the blood-red color, like two blood moons. After a long time, he finally performed the Azura sword Dao's sword domain again, the Azura blood C18 levels. The blood-red sword intent spread out like a tide, and in the endless blood sea, the 18 levels of blood prison overturned the earth and sky. Peerless sword Dao domain. Yushuang face turned serious. For the first time, she felt that it was tricky. In her eyes, her only real opponents in the 5 academy selection were Hua Xingjie, Yin Wufeng, and Gui Jianqiu. But now Yi Guchen, the dark horse, had caught her off guard. Rumble. The Azura blood C18 levels collided with the ice domain. The two sword Dao domains collided, bursting forth with monstrous sword qi that even separated the surging thunder tide. Break! In Yi Guchen's eyes, blood-red light burst out 3 feet long, and the Azura blood C surged to the sky. The 18 levels of blood prison directly broke the ice domain in an extremely forceful and domineering way. Puchi. Yushuang delicate body was hit by the impact, and she couldn't help but retreat. A stream of blood flowed from the corner of her mouth, which was particularly glaring against her snow-white skin. Yushuang was injured. The lords and aristocratic families who were watching the battle didn't expect this. Yushuang, who was ranked 27th on the sword list, was actually injured by Yi Guchen. I miscalculated. If I continue to be entangled here, it will be difficult for me to reach the upper level or even the top with the other geniuses. Yushuang struggled in her heart. She didn't expect that she would be forced to this extent by a nameless young man. Although she also had a trump card that she hadn't used yet, it was obviously impossible for her to use it now. It was a move that she had prepared for Hua Xingjie, Yin Wufeng, and the other geniuses. Moreover, compared to avenging Yu Yu and Kuei, it was more important for her to get a good result and enter the 5 academies. Thinking of this, no matter how unwilling Yushuang was, her delicate body flashed quickly, and she retreated like a snowflake. Yushuang, who had an extraordinary reputation, actually chose to flee. Qin Paisai and the other geniuses of Tianfeng Ridge were dumbfounded. Su Wenbin and Su Jingjing's eyes were also dazed. This was also something that they had never expected. Yi Guchen's eyes narrowed slightly. Yushuang wasn't too stupid. He couldn't fight to the death with Yushuang now. However, there were some small fries that had to be dealt with. Yi Guchen couldn't help but look at the Su siblings. Chapter 898. Feeling Yi Guchen's cold gaze, Su Wenbin and Su Jingjing trembled violently. Without the slightest hesitation, they immediately retreated and left. If they were to face Yi Guchen now, there would be no suspense. But how could Yi Guchen let them go? Although a fly was small, it was still annoying. Yi Guchen took a step forward and arrived in front of Su Wenbin and Su Jingjing in the blink of an eye. Compared to enemies, traitors were more hateful. Seeing this, Qin Paisai, Han Lingxian, and the others did not have the slightest sympathy on their faces. Previously, the Su siblings betrayed Skywind Ridge without the slightest hesitation. Now, they even attracted the lightning spirit to frame them. Spare my life, I'm from the Su family. Su Wenbin's body was trembling, and his voice was shaking. No one was unafraid of death, and people like Su Wenbin were even more afraid of death. Otherwise, when they were surrounded by the 2 great ridges, he would not have betrayed them so quickly. Dugubai, we were wrong, we shouldn't have treated you like this, let us go, we can make up for it. Su Jingjing's delicate face was also incomparably pale. These two siblings no longer had the arrogance, wanton, and condescending attitude they had when they were at Skywind Ridge. Their bodies trembled, and they looked at Yiguchen with fear in their eyes. Facing such people, Yiguchen was too lazy to say anything more. Two sword lights swept out, ending their lives. Really are? Su Wenbin clutched his neck and fell to the ground, his eyes filled with unwillingness. Su Jingjing was the same, lying in a pool of blood. At the last moment of their lives, they finally understood what kind of terrifying character they had provoked. It was a pity that he had comprehended it too late. Let's go. After casually killing the two, Yiguchen said indifferently. Han Lingxian, Qin Paisai, and the others also glanced at Yiguchen. Those pitch-black eyes did not have the slightest fluctuation of emotion, like a cold death god. For the first time, Han Lingxian felt that she did not understand Yiguchen at all. Soon, Yiguchen led the people from Tianfeng Ridge to the junction between the lower and middle levels. When they looked around, they saw a huge screen of lightning blocking their path. The reason why the lightning prison mountain was divided into lower, middle, upper, and peak levels was because of the existence of these lightning curtains. A faint fear appeared in the eyes of Qin Paisai and the rest as they looked at the lightning screen that was pouring down like a waterfall. Follow me, Yiguchen said. After bringing Qin Paisai to the middle level, he would have fulfilled his promise to Qin Zhen. That won't do. If we enter together, the power of the lightning screen will increase greatly. Qin Paisai smiled bitterly and shook her head. If it was so easy to pass through the lightning screen, many people would have already reached the middle level. It was precisely because this lightning screen was too difficult to pass that a large number of sky prides were blocked. Don't worry, all of you stand behind me, Yiguchen said calmly. Han Lingxian looked at Yiguchen with a trace of infatuation. She could only feel this kind of security from Yiguchen. Amitba, don't hesitate. Follow Big Brother and you'll have meat to eat. Kong Kong was not worried at all as he put his palms together and chanted. Little monk, do you still eat meat? Qin Paisai and the rest could not help but laugh. The heavy atmosphere also eased a little. After a moment of hesitation, Qin Paisai and the rest still chose to follow behind Yiguchen. Yiguchen stomped his foot on the ground, and a surge of extremely powerful true energy burst out, turning into a barrier that enveloped Han Lingxian, Qin Paisai, Kong Kong, and the rest. Then, everyone rushed towards the lightning screen. The moment they touched it, a loud rumble resounded. The power of lightning crazily poured down like a waterfall, drowning Yiguchen and the rest. Don't overestimate yourself. Outside the lightning prison mountain, the purple smoke territorial lord and the yellow dragon territorial lord coldly snorted. They could not wait to see the heavenly wind ridge get annihilated and fall under the lightning tide. Qin Zhen's palms were also sweating as he stared at the place where the lightning surged. Boom! At this moment, the place where the lightning fell seemed to tremble. Silver-purple lightning spread out, resisting the lightning tide. That is, everyone's gaze froze. A young man's figure slowly stepped into the air. Endless silver-purple lightning surged out of his body, resisting the lightning tide. It was as if he alone was enough to resist the boiling lightning tide. You can pass, Yiguchen said. Han Lingxian, Kong Kong, Qin Paisai, and the rest flashed and quickly passed through. When they stepped on the ground of the middle layer, Qin Paisai let out a long sigh of relief. They did not have much true energy left. They had relied on Yiguchen's strength to reach the middle layer. At this moment, they looked back and were shocked to see Yiguchen alone standing in the sky, undergoing the baptism of countless lightning tides. He was like the Lord of Lightning. Why didn't young Master Dugu pass? Zhuo Qiuqing was extremely surprised. If it were anyone else, it would be good if they could barely pass, but Yiguchen was still lingering. He's using the power of lightning to refine his true energy body. What a monster! Qin Paisai exclaimed. Thinking back to the time when she looked down on Yiguchen, Qin Paisai's cheeks burned. After a full hour, Yiguchen rushed out of the lightning screen. His body and true energy had been refined once again. Especially his true energy. Yiguchen vaguely felt that he was not too far away from breaking through to the fourth stage. Yi Guchen landed in front of Han Lingxian and the rest. "I fulfilled my promise. What do you plan to do next?" "Thank you for your help, young Master Dugu. We were blind before and doubted you many times." Qin Paisai, Zuoqiu Qing, Zhen Lang, and the rest sincerely apologized. "There's no need to say such things." Yi Guchen waved his hand. He did not care about this kind of thing. "We know our own limits. It's fortunate that we were able to reach the middle layer. Next, we'll withdraw," Qin Paisai said. They were already satisfied with the opportunity to join the 5 great academies. They had nothing else to ask for. It would be difficult for them to continue on the next path unless they were top geniuses. "This little monk will continue," Kong Kong said. Yi Guchen nodded slightly and did not say anything. Everyone had their own choice. He turned around and continued to climb up under the terrifying pressure of the lightning tide. "Young Master Dugu!" Han Lingxian couldn't help but shout. Yi Guchen stopped in his tracks. "Lingxian believes in you. You can reach the peak," Han Lingxian said firmly. "Heh." Yi Guchen smiled and continued to move forward without turning back. Can young Master Dugu really reach the peak? Even though they knew that Yi Guchen's strength was extraordinary, the peak of the Thunder Prison Mountain was filled with endless heavenly lightning. Perhaps only people at the level of Hua Wuxiu were qualified to reach the peak. Qin Paisai and the others were not too sure. Young Master Dugu is someone who can create miracles. Han Lingxian firmly believed. Whether it was comprehending the imperial sword steel or the kneeling of the Han family ancestor, or the 3 great heavenly gates shaking the world, Yi Guchen had created countless shocking miracles along the way. Therefore, Han Lingxian was looking forward to seeing Yi Guchen reach the peak and look down on everyone. Chapter 899. Next, Han Lingxian, Qin Paisai, and the rest left the Thunder Prison Mountain. They had already obtained the opportunity to enter the 5 academies. As for Yi Guchen and Kong Kong, they continued to climb the Thunder Prison Mountain. After entering the middle level, the lightning tide became even more turbulent and rushed down like a waterfall. There were only a few dozen Sky Prides who could continue climbing. The rest of the Sky Prides were either eliminated or chose to give up after stepping into the middle level. Facing the turbulent lightning tide, Yi Guchen did not have any defensive means and directly endured it with his body. His physique became more solid. Most importantly, after being tempered by the lightning power, his true qi was faintly showing signs of advancing to the 4th stage. However, what surprised Yi Guchen the most was Kong Kong. Kong Kong's strength was at the 5th stage of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. Logically speaking, it was impossible for him to hold on for so long. However, golden light appeared on the surface of Kong Kong's body, making him look like a little golden man plated with gold. On the surface of his body, swastikas vaguely appeared, which looked very strange. Kong Kong really has a secret. Looking at Kong Kong's strange appearance, Yi Guchen thought to himself. Kong Kong's physique seemed to be unusual. However, Yi Guchen did not ask further. Everyone had their own secrets. Comfortable. Kong Kong was a little smug, and his chubby cheeks were trembling. Not far away, some other Sky Prides gritted their teeth. Except for Hua Xingjie and a few other Sky Prides, most of the remaining Sky Prides were fighting hard. Look, Hua Xingjie broke through to the upper level. Outside the Thunder Prison Mountain, there were some exclamations. Hua Xingjie waved the folding fan in his hand, and sword chi rushed into the sky, breaking the lightning light curtain in the middle level and entering the upper level of the Thunder Prison Mountain. Hua Xingjie was the first to break through to the upper level. Then Yin Wufeng, Shangguan Yen, Gui Jianqiu, and the others broke through one after another. After that, Yushuang Yen, Yen Chok, and the others broke through again. Hey, do you guys think that Sword Demon is on the Thunder Prison Mountain? Some of the spectators were very curious. He's definitely there. How can a genius who can suppress the top 3 of the sword rankings be eliminated? It's just that we don't know who he is for now. Outside the Thunder Prison Mountain, everyone was discussing animatedly. They were all guessing who the Sword Demon was. Inside the Thunder Prison Mountain, Yi Guchen was still undergoing the baptism of the Thunder Tide. However, he discovered that as time passed, The assistance provided by the lightning energy was becoming smaller and smaller. It seems like this force of refinement has reached its limit. If I want to improve further, I'll have to reach the peak or acquire the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison. Yi Guchen's eyes flickered. At this point, he no longer had to deliberately slow down because the tempering power was no longer effective on him. Since that was the case, Yi Guchen naturally wouldn't waste any time. Boom! Yi Guchen activated his boundless sea of qi, and a terrifying true qi burst out from his body like a tornado. Yi Guchen stomped his feet on the ground, and his body flashed out like a cannonball. Wherever he passed, the thunder tide split open and broke through like a bolt of lightning. Previously, he had been resisting with his physical body. Now that he had activated his true qi to resist, his climbing speed immediately skyrocketed. This Brother Dugu is amazing. Kong Kong was stunned for a moment, and then hurriedly chased after him. Rumble! The turbulent thunder tide couldn't stop Yi Guchen's footsteps at all. He rushed directly to the barrier between the middle and upper layers at an extremely fast speed. Yi Guchen didn't stop at all. The extreme void dark thunder and purple lightning nether thunder in his body merged into one and turned into a silver purple void dark thunder. Yi Guchen raised his hand and the purple void dark thunder spread out, turning into a thunder waterfall and bombarding the thunder barrier in front of him. With a loud crack, the thunder light curtain between the middle and upper layers was directly torn apart by the purple void dark thunder. Yi Guchen's body flashed and stepped onto the upper layer. That young man from Skywind Ridge is so fast. That young man is called Dugubai. He's really a dark horse. He killed Yu Yunque, who ranked 65th on the sword roll, and defeated Yushuang Yen just now. Yi Guchen's rapid speed attracted attention even if he didn't want to. Is this young Master Dugu's true strength? The Sky Prides of Skywind Ridge, who had already left the Thunder Prison Mountain, were so shocked that their jaws almost fell to the ground. Yi Guchen had shown such speed from the beginning. Perhaps even Hua Xingjie couldn't beat him. I even said before that we shouldn't let young Master Dugu drag us down. In the end, we're the ones who are really dragging him down. Qin Paisai was completely convinced and smiled bitterly. Zuoqiu Qin, Zhen Lang, and the other Sky Prides were also a little ashamed. If it weren't for helping them break through the middle layer, Yi Guchen's speed wouldn't be slower than Hua Xingjie's. Only Han Lingshuan's beautiful eyes flashed with unprecedented splendor. She had to admit that such a young man was very attractive. Qin Zhen also sighed. He had made the right bet this time. The purple smoke overlord and the yellow dragon overlord looked as if they had eaten a fly. With Yi Guchen's current strength, it was almost certain that he would enter the 5 academies. He might even be valued by the academies. At that time, it would be wishful thinking for them to take revenge. Yi Guchen broke through the upper layer of the Thunder Prison Mountain. That terrifying lightning tide seemed to have multiplied, turning into one huge wave after another as it smashed over. Even with Yi Guchen's cultivation, he still felt the pressure. However, his speed didn't slow down much. Not long after Yi Guchen broke through the upper layer, Kong Kong also broke through. Golden swastika runes appeared on his body to resist the Thunder Tide's bombardment. There were only 20 to 30 Sky Prides still in the Thunder Prison Mountain. These people were the ones that the 5 academies really wanted to compete for. On the 5 ships in the sky, the people from the 5 academies began to pay attention to the Thunder Prison Mountain. Previously, the Thunder Prison Mountain was a mixed bag of good and bad people, so the people from the academies didn't bother to observe. But now, those who could stay were all 1 in a million Sky Prides. Haha, as expected, the first place of this selection is undoubtedly Hua Xingjie. On the ship of Tensei College, Elder Hua Mo stroked his beard and smiled. Hua Xingjie was a member of the Hua family, so he was naturally happy. That's not necessarily true. Have you forgotten about the Sword Demon? Bei Xian, Elder of Sacred Cliff College, retorted. The Sword Demon was only amazing during the test. I haven't seen his true strength with my own eyes. The test is just a test, Elder Hua Mo said lightly. He didn't mind enrolling the Sword Demon into Tensei College, but it couldn't overshadow Hua Xingjie's excellence. On the ship of Tianxian College, Mu Xingzu's attention wasn't on the Thunder Prison Mountain. She wasn't interested in coming. On the other hand, Jiang Fengmian was a disciple of Sun Moon College's Holy Emblem. He was supposed to be on the ship of Sun Moon College, but now he was beside Mu Xingzu. Miss Mu, who do you think will be the winner of this selection? Jiang Fengmian was like a modest gentleman, and his tone was gentle. I don't know and I don't care. Mu Xingzu was absent-minded. She had been in this state ever since she heard the news of Yi Guqin's death. Hey, I think it will be Hua Xingjie, and that mysterious sword demon is also possible. I wonder who will be the sword demon? Yinglang chimed in. Do you think everyone is worthy of the title of sword demon? Mu Xingzhu sighed sorrowfully with a knot in her stomach. Chapter 900. Back then, in order to save her, Yi Guqin transformed into the sword demon and wiped out hundreds of people with a single sword strike. Blood rained down from the sky as he opened up a path of life and death. Mu Xingzhu still could not forget that scene. In Mu Xingzhu's heart, only Yi Guqin was worthy of the title of Sword Master and Sword Demon. The rest of the people were just impostors. Therefore, Mu Xingzhu did not care about the so-called Sword Demon. Jiang Fengmian did not care about Mu Xingzhu's indifference and smiled gently. Oh, then let's wait and see. Under the attention of the people from the 5 great academies, as well as all the lords, aristocratic families, and heaven's prides outside the mountain, the remaining 20 to 30 heaven's prides began their final assault on the peak. Although everyone knew that it was almost impossible to break through the upper level and reach the peak. In the past, only the top 15 on the sword ranking and above were qualified to reach the peak. Do you think the sword demon has a chance to reach the peak? It's hard to say. Although the sword demon overshadowed the top 3 on the sword ranking in the 3 heavenly gates test, we don't know his true strength. Outside the Thunder Prison Mountain, countless people were discussing. Although they did not know who the sword demon was for the time being, everyone was certain in their hearts. The real sword demon must be hidden among these 20 to 30 people. Amidst wave after wave of lightning, Yi Guqin went against the trend. Purple void lightning wrapped around his body, and his vigorous true qi broke through the lightning waves. We're almost at the peak. Yi Guqin looked into the distance. The back of Hua Xingjie and the others was even higher. Endless lightning flooded the peak, and one could vaguely feel an explosive sword qi. It must be the aura emitted by the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison. Yi Guqin was determined to win the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison. Finally, Hua Xingjie and the others approached the peak. However, they suddenly stopped in their tracks. Because there was not only a thicker lightning barrier between the upper level and the peak. Most importantly, outside the barrier, there were 4 lightning spirits with extremely powerful auras. The cultivation of each lightning spirit had reached the divine dwelling stage. 4 thunder spirits comparable to the divine dwelling stage. Seeing this, the faces of the remaining 20 to 30 geniuses turned extremely dark. After persevering to this point, everyone wanted to reach the peak. After all, if they managed to reach the peak, not only would they be highly sought after by the 5 academies, but they would also be given the identity of a Silver Emblem disciple. In the 5 great academies, the students were divided into Bronze Emblem disciples, Silver Emblem disciples, Gold Emblem disciples, and the most honorable Holy Emblem disciples. Students of different ranks received different treatment. If he could directly obtain the identity of a Silver Emblem disciple, it would undoubtedly be much more convenient for him to enter the 5 major academies. He would also be able to obtain more resources. But the 4 divine dwelling stage lightning spirits were like 4 mountains, blocking the path of all the heaven prides. Even Hua Xingjie, this kind of 9th phase peak heaven's pride, had an incomparably solemn expression. Although there was only a slight difference between the peak of the 9th phase and the divine dwelling stage, the difference in strength was like the difference between heaven and earth. Not to mention that the thunder spirit's cultivation was much higher than that of a cultivator of the same level. Moreover, they were still under the impact of the lightning tide, and their true qi was being depleted every moment. Everyone, there is only one way left, Hua Xingjie said. The eyes of the other heaven prides flashed. Yushuang Yen glanced at Yiguchen with a hint of coldness and wariness. The heaven prides who were walking in front did not see the battle between Yushuang Yen and Yiguchen. Therefore, Hua Xingjie and the others did not know that Yiguchen had the strength to defeat Yushuang Yen. Yushuang Yen did not take the initiative to say it, as if she was scheming something. Looking at Yushuang Yan's cold eyes, Yiguchen's expression was indifferent. He did not take the initiative to attack. He wanted to see what Hua Xingjie had in mind. The little monk, Kong Kong, also came up and stood beside Yiguchen. I'm sure everyone knows that even without the 4 thunder spirits, some of you will not be able to break through the lightning barrier, Hua Xingjie said indifferently. Young Master Hua, what do you mean by that? A heaven's pride asked coldly. Heaven's prides who could climb to the top were all capable. They were not ordinary people. Hua Xingjie's words were a little harsh. I'm just speaking the truth. I have a suggestion. Let those who are weaker and have no hope of breaking through the barrier distract the thunder spirits. Of course, my Hua family will definitely compensate you. Hua Xingjie's lips curved into a faint smile. His words caused the expressions of the surrounding heaven's prides to change. Hua Xingjie wanted to use them as cannon fodder? Hua Xingjie, this is not a good idea, Yen Choku said. Among the heaven's prides present, the weaker ones were mostly from the faction of rogue cultivators. What's wrong with that? We're not chasing them away for free. Young Master Hua has already done his best, Yushuang Yen said. She and Yen Choku had always been at odds. I agree as well. Some of you here indeed have no hope of reaching the top. Why don't you make some contributions? My Yin family will also compensate you. We won't mistreat you. Yin Wufeng also stood out with an evil smile on his face. Although Shangguan Yen was also a member of the aristocratic family, she did not speak. Her almond-shaped eyes darted around, waiting to see what would happen. What if we don't agree? Gui Jianchou asked. If we don't agree, then no one will be able to reach the top. Wouldn't that be a pity? Hua Xingjie said with a faint smile. The atmosphere became tense. Vaguely, a strong smell of gunpowder filled the air. Yushuang Yen glanced at Yiguchen. Her gaze was deep and cold. She said, Shuangyin has a suggestion. These two, one is a child with only a stage 5 cultivation, and the other is only a stage 3 cultivation. They are suitable candidates. Yushuang Yen changed the topic and directed it to Yiguchen and Kong Kong. Oh, indeed. Hua Xingjie glanced at Yiguchen with a faint look of surprise in his eyes. Obviously, he did not notice that Yiguchen was only a stage 3 cultivation. He was surprised that Yiguchen could make it this far with only a stage 3 cultivation. It was very surprising. But no matter how surprising, a stage 3 was still a stage 3. With such a cultivation, it was impossible for him to pass through the lightning barrier. That can be done. I agree. Yin Wufeng glanced at Yiguchen and smiled evilly. Shangguan Yen did not say a word. Instead, she looked at Yiguchen with great interest. She knew a little about Yiguchen's true strength. She was also very curious about how Yiguchen would deal with the current situation. Amitba. This female benefactor's chest is not bad, but her heart is too weak. Kong Kong clasped her hands together and chanted the name of Buddha. She shook her head regretfully. This kind of appearance was somewhat amusing. What did you say? Yushuang Yan's face was even colder. A little monk dared to blaspheme her like this? Yiguchen's face was calm. He raised his eyelids. Yushuang Yan wanted to use this method to deal with him. Brother, my Hua family will compensate you. Please take action to lure away those thunder spirits. Hua Xingjie said calmly. Although his tone was calm, the toughness in it was obvious. Please do it. Yin Wufeng's face was cold. In his eyes, Yiguchen and Kong Kong did not have the courage to go against the elites of the aristocratic families. Yushuang Yan's lips curled into a cold smile. Indeed, she might not be able to deal with Yiguchen personally. But so what? She had plenty of ways to deal with Yiguchen. On the other side, Gui Jianchou, Yen Chou, and the others frowned slightly but did not act rashly. After all, they were strangers to Yiguchen. Yen Chou had only seen Yiguchen once at the Tianfeng banquet. There was no friendship between them. Are you, sure you want to attack me? Yiguchen turned his head and glanced coldly at Hua Xingjie and the others. Chapter 901. Yiguchen believed in the principle of not offending others if they didn't offend him first. However, if someone didn't know what was good for them and tried to provoke him, Yiguchen wouldn't show any mercy. Yu Yuanke, Ziyuexin, Huang Feiyun, and the others were examples of this. Oh, you mean we can't attack you? Before Hua Xingjie could say anything, Yin Wufeng tilted his head and a wicked glint flashed in his eyes. The Yin family was also a powerful family in the Sword Dao Alliance. They had a false sage and were not weaker than the Hua family, Jiang family, and Shengguan family. Although Yin Wufeng wasn't the most outstanding prodigy in the Yin family, his talent and strength weren't weak either. In the Sword Dynasty, there weren't many people that Yin Wufeng didn't dare to provoke. You can attack me, but you'll have to bear the consequences. Yiguchen's tone was equally flat. His attitude surprised Gui Jianchou, Yen Chou, and the others. After all, not everyone had the guts to talk to Hua Xingjie and Yin Wufeng with such an attitude. All right, I'd like to see what the consequences of provoking you are. Yin Wufeng's figure flashed as he charged directly at Yiguchen. There was no time to delay. Yin Wufeng wanted to capture Yiguchen as soon as possible and use him to attract the Thunder Spirits. This would give them a chance to enter the top floor. It's Yin Wufeng. He actually attacked Dugu Bai. Yin Wufeng, ranked 23rd on the Sword Dao Alliance sword list. He's second only to Hua Xingjie in this selection. I wonder how that young man provoked Yin Wufeng. I'm afraid Hua Xingjie and Yin Wufeng want to capture some people as cannon fodder. Otherwise, with the 4 Thunder Spirits guarding them, how could they reach the top? At the foot of the Thunder Prison Mountain, everyone was watching, including those who had been eliminated and those who had been selected. This is bad. Han Lingxian and the others' hearts clenched. Although Yiguchen had defeated Yu Shuangyan, Yin Wufeng was stronger than Yu Shuangyan. On the other side, the people from the 5 great academies also noticed the battle in the sky. The Yin family really knows how to pick opponents. Do you want to use others as cannon fodder? Bei Xian elder from Sacred Cliff College sneered. At Long River College, an elder from the Yin family said indifferently, the winner is the king, and the loser is the bandit. Moreover, he's just a trash with a cultivation level of stage 3. So what if he reaches the top? Elder Yin Li is right. My Tensei College will never accept such a person. If Sacred Cliff College wants him, then he will belong to your Sacred Cliff College, Elder Hua Imo said indifferently. Oh, are you sure? Bei Xian elder's eyes lit up. Although the others looked down on Yiguchen's stage 3 strength, Bei Xian elder felt that Yiguchen was not that simple. Being able to reach the top with a cultivation level of stage 3 didn't mean that his cultivation level was weak, but it showed his potential. Of course, my Tensei College only accepts monsters, such as Hua Xingjie, Yin Wufeng, and that sword demon, Elder Hua Imo said indifferently. Behind Elder Hua Imo, Hua Tengfei's eyes fell on Yiguchen, and a trace of doubt flashed in his eyes. Although Yiguchen's face had changed, Hua Tengfei still felt a trace of familiarity with his figure. On the Tianxian College's ship, Mu Xingzu's dim almond eyes suddenly focused when she inadvertently glanced at Yiguchen. A trace of familiarity, Mu Xingzu's delicate body suddenly trembled, and her eyes focused. Jiang Fengmian, who was standing beside her, saw Mu Xingzu's strange expression and also secretly observed. At the top of the Thunder Prison Mountain, a great battle broke out. Yin Wufeng flicked his finger, and his vigorous true energy turned into streaks of sword radiance, which swept out. Yiguchen also flicked his finger and used the 6-pulse divine sword. His true energy was compressed in his meridians, and it turned into streaks of sword radiance that shot out. Boom, boom, boom. The streaks of sword radiance burst out, and the surrounding thunder tide collapsed. Yin Wufeng's lips curled into an evil smile, and he blasted his palm toward Yiguchen. Yiguchen drew his sword and stabbed it toward Yin Wufeng's palm. Yin Wufeng directly grabbed the edge of Yiguchen's sword with one hand. The surrounding sky prides focused their gazes. Yin Wufeng actually wanted to grab Yi Guchen's sword with his bare hand. Clang. However, when Yin Wufeng's palm grabbed Yi Guchen's sword, the sound of metal clashing rang out, and sparks burst out, and the air shook. Swoosh! A streak of sword radiance suddenly shot out from Yin Wufeng's palm, and it flew toward Yi Guchen's face. This scene was extremely sudden, and it was beyond many people's expectations. It's the Yin family's unique skill, the sword in palm. Gui Jianchou said in a serious tone. The sword in palm was the Yin family's unique skill. The sword was hidden in the palm, and the speed of the attack was extremely fast, and it could catch the opponent off guard. You should be able to finish him off with one move. Hua Xingjie shook his head and smiled. In his opinion, Yi Guchen's resistance was laughable. Han Lingxian and the others who were watching the battle could not help but feel their hearts skip a beat, and they almost cried out involuntarily. Seeing this, Yi Guchen directly stretched out his other hand and directly grabbed the sword in palm that was thrusting toward him. Fool, do you think your hand is a divine weapon? Yin Wufeng raised his eyebrows and looked at him coldly. Just when he thought Yi Guchen's hand would be cut off in the next moment, clang! The crisp sound of metal colliding was heard, and greenish-gold light flowed out from Yi Guchen's palm. He directly grabbed the sword in palm with his bare hands, and then viciously crushed it. Yi Guchen had a 2-star ancient god physical body, flawless body of Vajra, and a perfect physical body. His current physical body was already extremely strong, and it was not difficult for him to crush an ordinary divine weapon with his bare hands. At the same time that he crushed the sword in palm, Yi Guchen infused his vital energy into the blade, and it shook violently, shaking off Yin Wufeng's grip on his hand. He flipped his hand and executed the immortal murdering sword technique at Yin Wufeng. Boom! Yin Wufeng's figure suddenly retreated, and he stared at Yi Guchen with great surprise. What a strong physical body! The other Sky Prides were also surprised. Yi Guchen's physical body was too strong. Even Hua Xingjie raised his eyebrows slightly. He did not care about Yi Guchen's vital energy cultivation, but his physical body was surprising. In the sky, on the ship of Tensei College, Hua Tingfei looked at Yi Guchen with suspicion. The scene of Yi Guchen crushing the sword in palm reminded him of the time when his sword was crushed by Dugawubai in the Chuyan dynasty. It was too similar. No way! Hua Tingfei could not believe it. After all, Yi Guchen had not recovered his vital energy cultivation at that time. From a cripple without vital energy to a level 3 spirit bridge of heaven and earth? Hua Tingfei could not believe it, but he still paid attention. You do have some physical strength, but that is not a reason for you to be arrogant. Yin Wufeng was serious, and the aura of a level 9 spirit bridge of heaven and earth completely erupted. What he wanted was to end the battle as quickly as possible. Otherwise, he would consume a lot of energy under the impact of the lightning tide. 9 Hell's Sword. Yin Wufeng drew his sword, and a pitch-black sword energy that was dozens of feet long slashed at Yi Guchen. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.